Celia Mercer had one hand beneath the quilt when she went still. Not politely still, the way appraisers did before telling somebody their family treasure was worth $35 and a trip through the washing machine. Her thumbs stopped against the backing. Her shoulders tightened. She bent until the silver ends of her hair nearly brushed the fabric. Who repaired this? Nora kept both hands around her paper cup. My grandmother, I guess. You guess? It was in her linen closet. Celia turned back a fold and found 3 tiny stitches tucked beneath the binding. 2 slanted marks crossed by a loop so fine it looked drawn in pencil. The room around them continued as normal. Folding chairs scraped. An elderly man argued about a Civil War sampler. Someone near the door sneezed 4 times. Celia looked at Nora. What was your grandmother's name? Evelyn Bell. The appraiser's fingers slipped from the quilt. Nora had expected care instructions. Maybe a warning about mildew. She had not expected the woman to whisper Evelyn's name, like an answer to a question nobody else had heard. On the table, the estate sale tag still hung from one corner. Lot 214. Bed, cover, as is, $82. Celia touched the tag. Your family sold this? They sold everything? And you bought it back? Nora nodded. Celia pulled the quilt toward her with sudden alarming care. Then don't let anybody wash it. Don't let anybody cut a thread. And until we know exactly what this is, don't let your family take it away from you. 6 days earlier, Nora had been standing in Evelyn's kitchen while her uncle put prices on the dead. Dale carried a clipboard against his chest and moved through the house with the grave efficiency of a man inspecting storm damage. He was 58, broad through the middle, and dressed for difficult work in pressed jeans and boots that had never met mud. Little yellow tags appeared wherever he went. Dining table, 400, china hutch, 650, brass lamps, 75 for the pair. He even tagged the ceramic rooster Evelyn had kept beside the stove, though its left foot had been glued on twice and its painted eye had always looked judgmental. $8? Nora said. Dale glanced at it. That seem high? It seems like Grandma might come back specifically to complain. From the pantry, Patrice said, if Mama comes back, that rooster is the least of our problems. For 1 second, the 3 of them almost laughed. The sound rose and died in the same breath, and Nora hated them a little less until Patrice emerged carrying Evelyn's blue willow serving bowl under one arm. That's going in the sale? Nora asked. Patrice shifted the bowl against her hip. No, this was promised to me. When? A long time ago. Nora looked toward Dale. He made a mark on his clipboard. Patrice and Mom had an understanding. So did Grandma and I. The pen stopped. Dale did not raise his head. About what? Nora could have said the sewing room. She could have said the quilt frames, the button tins, the kitchen stool with the uneven leg. She could have said the house itself, not because Evelyn had promised it, but because Nora had spent 6 years knowing which windows swelled in August and which breaker tripped if the toaster and microwave ran together. A place could belong to your hands long before it belonged to your name. Instead, she said, the old quilt upstairs. Dale resumed writing. Everything goes through the sale. Patrice is carrying a bowl out the back door. I'm standing right here, Patrice said. Yes, that's what makes it impressive. Patrice's mouth pinched. She was 61 and pretty in a sharpened way, with Evelyn's cheekbones and none of Evelyn's willingness to leave her gray hair alone. She set the bowl on the counter, but kept one hand on it. Dale sighed. We're trying to keep this fair. Nora looked through the doorway into the dining room. The walnut chest that had stood under the front window was gone. Where's the chest? I'm taking it. Fair must be exhausting. That got his head up. For most of Nora's life, Dale had spoken to her in the tone people used when helping a confused customer at a hardware store. Patient, public, and faintly offended by the delay. Your grandmother has been dead 11 days, he said. The house is costing money every day we sit around arguing over junk. Nora felt the old correction rise automatically. Grandma, not your grandmother? As if he had somehow earned less of Evelyn by saying it formally. She swallowed it. The realtor doesn't list until next week. And before she does, we need the place emptied. I live here. Dale's expression softened, which was worse, temporarily. The refrigerator clicked off. Without its hum, the kitchen sounded abandoned. Nora had known she would have to leave. Evelyn's will divided what remained equally between Dale and Patrice. with Nora's dead mother's share having been settled years ago in a way no one ever explained the same way twice. Nora had no claim to the house. She had understood that in the factual part of her mind. The rest of her had kept buying toilet paper. "How long?" she asked. Dale glanced at Patrice before answering. 10 days should be enough." "For what?" "To make arrangements. 10 days is enough to make arrangements if the arrangement is prison." "Nora," Patrice said softly. "No, it's useful to know the theme." Dale laid the clipboard on the table. "We could have brought in a nursing service. We didn't, because you said you wanted to stay with her. You lived here without paying rent. I paid the electric bill. You know what I mean? I bought groceries. I drove her to physical therapy. I cleaned her when she couldn't. We know what you did," he said. But he looked away when he said it. That was the family trick. They knew what Nora did, right up until knowing, created a debt. Mallory came through the back door carrying a plastic tote full of neon price stickers. At 31, she had Patrice's dark eyes and Dale's talent for entering a room as if she had been asked to manage it. "I got more dots," she announced. Then she noticed everybody's faces. "Good, so we're still having fun." She kissed Nora's cheek, smelling of vanilla coffee, and set the tote down. Mallory sold houses for a brokerage in town and had volunteered to organize the estate sale. She called it helping. Nora privately called it attaching removable prices to every memory she had. "Did you tag the upstairs linens?" Dale asked. "Most of them. The good white set has a rust mark or blood or something." "Rust," Nora said. Mallory raised both hands. "I was not asking for the story. It came from Grandma drying scissors on the bed. I was right not to ask." Nora followed her upstairs. Evelyn's room had already lost its smell. The medicinal sweetness of hand cream and peppermint was giving way to cardboard and open drawers. Clothes lay in sorted heaps across the mattress. Donate, sale, discard. Patrice had taken the cedar hangers, but left the dresses in a trash bag. The quilt was folded at the foot of the bed. In daylight, it looked worse than Nora remembered. The cream patches had browned. A red block near the center had faded almost pink, and one edge bore a shadow from years of being tucked beneath Evelyn's feet. It was too heavy, made of dozens of fabrics that had no business agreeing with one another. Mallory pinched a corner. "This thing weighs as much as she did. Don't hold it like that. I'm not hurting it. You're stretching the edge." Mallory let go. "Sorry." Nora smoothed the place her cousin had pinched. Beneath her palm, the cloth rose in familiar ridges. During thunderstorms, Evelyn had allowed Nora into her bed, but never admitted it was for comfort. "You're keeping me awake with that wandering around," she would grumble. "Get under there and be still." Then she would put one dry hand on the quilt between them until the thunder passed. "I want this," Nora said. Mallory glanced toward the hallway. "Then take it." Dale said, "Everything goes through the sale. Dale also thinks khaki is a personality." "Put it in your car." Nora looked at her. Mallory had already moved to the dresser and was separating pillowcases. She could be kind when kindness costs no confrontation. If he sees it gone, he'll say I stole it. He won't notice. He noticed $8 missing from the ceramic rooster. Mallory groaned. "Fine, I'll put a low price on it." "I shouldn't have to buy it." "No, you shouldn't." Mallory folded a pillowcase into a clean square. But everybody is raw, and it's 80% easier to let people be stupid than convince them they're being stupid. That sounds like something printed on a real estate mug. It should be. I'd sell a lot of mugs. She tied a yellow tag to the quilt. $12. The morning of the sale, Nora came home from the hotel at 7:15 with damp cuffs and the sour clean scent of industrial detergent in her hair. She had spent 8 hours feeding banquet linens through a press while 200 strangers slept in beds she would never afford. Cars were already parked along the road. Mallory had put up signs. Estate sale. Entire house. People waited at the porch steps with travel mugs and reusable shopping bags, speaking in low, eager voices. A man wearing fingerless gloves peered through the front window. Nora stopped beside him. She hated people looking in. He jumped back. "Sorry, not me. The dead woman whose house you're looking into." The man moved to the end of the line. Inside, Dale was counting bills into a metal cash box. Patrice had arranged Evelyn's costume jewelry on a card table and wore the blue willow bowl's absence like a small, private victory. Nora went upstairs. The quilt was gone. She checked the linen closet, though she knew better. Then the bedroom chair beneath the bed, the donate bags. Mallory, Her cousin was on the landing with a roll of red sold stickers looped around her wrist. "Where's the quilt? I moved the linens downstairs. Better traffic. You said $12. I know. Where is it?" Mallory hesitated. Dale repriced a few things. The quilt lay across a folding table in the dining room with a different tag tied to its corner. Lot 214. Bed cover. As is. $50. Nora found Dale at the front door. "You raised the price. A sale needs room for bidding. It isn't an auction. It is for popular items. Nobody has even come inside yet." He lowered his voice. "If you want it, buy it like anybody else. Why are you doing this?" His eyes moved toward the waiting people. Dale could endure cruelty better than embarrassment. "Because every time we let you take one thing, you'll decide another thing was promised. Patrice will do the same. Then Mallory. Then we'll spend a month fighting over broken lamps. You took the chest. The chest was discussed. With yourself." The doorbell rang, though the door was open. Dale looked past her and put on his public face. "We're starting." By 9, Evelyn's house was full of strangers opening drawers. Nora stayed close to the quilt. She watched a woman fold back the corner and frown at the brown backing. A dealer in a canvas vest inspected the stitching with a magnifier, then wandered off toward the china. Twice Nora moved someone's coffee cup away from it. At 10:30, a tall woman with turquoise rings carried it to Dale. "I'll give you 40. Nora stepped forward. 50. The woman looked her over. 55, 60. Dale's face changed. Not much, just enough for Nora to see that he was pleased the system had proven him right. The woman ran her fingers over the faded red block. 65. Nora had $109 in her checking account and 40 in cash. Her rented room required a $300 deposit by Monday. Her car made a grinding sound when she turned left. 70, she said. The woman shrugged. "Too rich for me." 75, Dale said. Nora stared at him. He gave a helpless little smile. Sales tax. Kentucky sales tax did not turn $70 into 75. Nora knew that. Dale knew she knew it. She opened her wallet. Mallory stood near the staircase, watching. Nora counted out 320s and 110. Then she added a 5 from the emergency fold behind her driver's license. Dale wrote a receipt and handed it over with the quilt. At the door, he called after her. "You forgot the tax." She stopped. For a moment, the whole crowded house seemed to pause with her. Then Nora dug into her coat pocket, found 7 crumpled dollars and a handful of change, and returned to the cash table. She placed the money down one piece at a time until Dale had $82. "Clean and fair," she said. Outside, she gathered the quilt against her chest. Through the front window, she saw Mallory lift her phone. A second later, the family group chat chimed in Nora's pocket. Mallory had posted a picture of her carrying the bundle away. Nora got her inheritance after all. Beneath it were 3 laughing faces. Nora walked to her car without answering. The quilt was heavier than she remembered, and from somewhere deep inside its folds came the faint smell of peppermint. The peppermint lasted until Nora reached the first stoplight. She sat with the quilt heaped in the passenger seat and breathed through her mouth, trying not to cry over a smell. Behind her, a truck honked. The light had turned green. "Go around," she muttered, though there was nowhere for him to go. Her phone chimed again in her coat pocket. She made it 2 blocks before pulling into a gas station, parking beside the air pump, and opening the family group chat. Patrice had added, "Better than nothing." Dale had replied with a thumbs up. Mallory had posted another picture. This one zoomed in on Nora's face. She had been looking down at the quilt, not at the camera. The angle made her look solemn and foolish. A woman rescuing garbage from people sensible enough to sell it. Nora typed, "You charged me tax twice." She erased it. Then she typed, "Hope the bowl was worth more than $12. She erased that too. Evelyn had believed an insult should either improve a person or ruin their afternoon. Anything in between was wasted breath. Nora left the chat without saying anything. The silence felt weak, but at least it belonged to her. She drove to the hotel because she had nowhere else to take the quilt. Her car was already packed with 2 duffel bags, a lamp, winter clothes, and a box of kitchen things Dale had deemed personal rather than estate property. She carried the quilt through the employee entrance in a clear housekeeping bag and wedged it into the top of her locker. Tanya Brooks, who ran the flatwork iron on weekends, watched her force the locker shut. You moving in? Tanya asked. Management says the spa package doesn't include employee housing. They're missing a revenue stream. Tanya was 47 and built like she could carry a banquet table without asking anyone to take the other end. She had worked at the hotel for 19 years and claimed she remained because every other employer in town had already disappointed her. She nodded toward the locker. What's in the bag? A quilt. Must be a bad quilt if it has to be contained. My family had an estate sale. Tanya's face changed. She knew Evelyn had died. She had covered 2 of Nora's shifts during the last week, then refused Nora's offer to repay the hours with the words, "Don't make grief a timesheet." They sold your quilt? It wasn't mine. Tanya waited. Nora untied her apron. Now it is? That sounds expensive. $82. Then it better know how to drive. Nora laughed despite herself. It came out rough enough that Tanya pretended to inspect the iron. The room above Delgado's washfold was available because its former tenant had left in the middle of the night with the shower curtain and none of his frozen food. Mrs. Delgado mentioned both facts while showing Nora around. The room was at the end of a narrow hall over the dryers. It had one window, a slanted ceiling, and carpet the color of uncooked oatmeal. The bathroom was shared with a man named Ron, who worked mornings at a tire shop and kept his toothbrush in a travel case because, as Mrs. Delgado explained, he has trust issues. The dryers beneath them created a constant low vibration in the floor. How much? Nora asked. $5.50 a month, $2.50 deposit. No pets, no candles, no hot plates. And if Ron says you took his toothpaste, don't argue. Just tell me. Nora looked at the room again. Can I pay half the deposit Friday and half next paycheck? Mrs. Delgado studied her. She was a small woman in a red cardigan, with reading glasses suspended from a beaded chain. You work at the riverside? Laundry? That why you smell like swimming pool? Industrial lemon? Mrs. Delgado nodded as though this checked out. Half Friday, half in 2 weeks. If you leave with my shower curtain, I find you. I own one. Everybody says that after. Nora moved in the following evening. Dale had already sold Evelyn's bed, so packing the bedroom felt less like leaving, and more like clearing herself from a place that no longer required her permission. Pale rectangles marked the walls where photographs had hung. The ceramic rooster was gone from the kitchen. Someone had bought it for $6 after bargaining with Patrice. Nora found Patrice wrapping glasses in newspaper. I thought those were in the sale. They are. People can't take them loose. You're wrapping them after they bought them? Patrice held up a tumbler. This one is yours, unless you want it sold too. It was a heavy green glass with tiny bubbles trapped in the sides. Evelyn had kept her dentures in it overnight until Nora bought her a proper case. The memory should have made the glass less desirable. Somehow, it did not. Nora took it. Thanks. Patrice folded the newspaper into a tighter square. Dale should have let you take the quilt. Nora waited for the sentence to continue. It did, but you could have handled it better. There she is. I'm trying, Nora. At what? Patrice put another glass in the box. At not making this uglier than it already is. You're doing that by telling the person who paid for Grandma's groceries that free rent was enough? I didn't say that. You stood next to it. Patrice's hands stopped. For a second she looked more tired than defensive. You think I don't know what you did for her? She asked. You think I don't know why she could stay here? Nora did not answer. Patrice lowered her voice. I offered to come twice a week. She said she'd rather fall down the stairs. That sounds like her. She made me feel useless every time I walked in this house. So, you took the serving bowl? The tiredness vanished. You don't have to turn everything into a knife. No. Grandma left plenty lying around. Patrice stared at her, then laughed once, unwillingly. It was Evelyn's laugh, short and surprised, and both women looked toward the hallway, as if the sound had come from somewhere else. Patrice reached into a box beneath the table and pulled out Evelyn's brown wool coat. Take this, she said. It fits you better. Nora held it by the shoulders. One pocket sagged from years of carrying peppermints. Was this promised to me too? Don't push your luck. Patrice went back to the glasses. That night, Nora spread the quilt over the narrow bed in her new room. It covered the mattress and hung unevenly on both sides. Against the oatmeal carpet and blank walls, its faded colors seemed less brown than quiet. She sat cross-legged beneath it, eating noodles from Evelyn's green glass because she had forgotten to pack a bowl. The blocks did not follow any pattern Nora recognized. One was a crooked star. Another looked like steps cut into dark blue cloth. There were plain rectangles beside careful curves, fine cotton touching coarse ticking, black wool joined to flowered rayon. Evelyn, who had once made Nora redo a blouse hem 4 times because it wandered 1/8 of an inch, had allowed whole sections of the quilt to lean. Nora found it comforting. Then her toe caught in the unfinished corner. A line of stitches had loosened along the binding, exposing the thin batting beneath. Nora set down the glass. She lifted the corner into her lap and examined it beneath the lamp. The thread had not snapped. It had worked free, perhaps from the way Mallory had lifted it, or the woman at the sale had folded it. Nora owned needles. She had spent years mending hotel pillowcases after guests tore them on luggage hardware and then swore the damage had been there before. But she could hear Evelyn's voice. Don't repair a thing before you know why it failed. The next morning, a flyer on the laundromat bulletin board caught her eye while she waited for Mrs. Delgado to find a receipt book. Textile Appraisal Clinic. The phrase sounded expensive, but the small print said $20 for one item, no appointment required. Celia Mercer, Textile Conservation, Thursday evening. Nora tore off one of the phone number tabs. Something wrong with your coat? Mrs. Delgado asked. My quilt. You bought a broken quilt? I bought a used one. All quilts are used. That's the point. On Thursday, Nora carried it into Celia Mercer's studio between a framed needlepoint of a blue heron and a man holding a sampler he insisted had been stitched by a Union field nurse. Celia's assistant wrote bed cover on Nora's intake form. Quilt, Nora corrected. The assistant looked at the bundled fabric. Right. Nora nearly left. Then Celia called her name. Now the quilt lay across the padded table, and Celia had just told her not to let her family take it. Nora tightened her grip on the paper cup. Why would they? Because people often become attached to an object when someone knowledgeable becomes interested in it. That's a delicate way to say greedy. I spend my days telling people their grandmother's blanket isn't going to fund retirement. Delicacy keeps me alive. Celia leaned over the backing again. Up close, she appeared to be in her late 50s, with a narrow face and deep lines bracketing her mouth. A magnifier hung on a black cord around her neck. You said this was in Evelyn's linen closet? Top shelf. It had been there longer than I can remember. Did she ever talk about it? No. Did you ask? Nora bristled. She wasn't big on guided tours. Celia looked up. No, she wasn't. The familiarity in her tone felt like a hand closing around Nora's wrist. How did you know her? Celia did not answer immediately. She turned the quilt so the unfinished corner faced the work light, then lifted the binding with a slim metal tool. I was 27, she said. I'd been working at the county museum for 6 months, and I put a tier in a coverlet that had survived since 1861. My supervisor told me to call Mrs. Bell and pray. Grandma fixed it. She made me fix it. Which was worse. That sounded so exactly like Evelyn that Nora forgot to breathe. Celia pointed to the 3 tiny marks beneath the binding. She used this to anchor weak cloth without forcing it into a shape it could no longer hold. 2 diagonals and a loop. She called it a swallow stitch. Is that a real stitch? It was real when she did it. Nora touched the table's edge. She never told me she worked for a museum. She didn't work for us. She worked when she felt like it, charged according to how much she respected you, and once mailed back a quilt because the owner called it quaint. Nora almost smiled. That sounds expensive. It was educational. Celia moved along the backing, finding another 3-part stitch, then another. Her expression grew more intent with each one. What? Nora asked. I don't know yet. You looked like you knew exactly. I know the hand. I don't know the object. It's Grandma's quilt. Yes. Celia's gaze remained on the cloth. But I think it may also be the quilt people have been asking me about for 25 years. Nora stared at her. Celia drew the faded red block toward the light. Along its edge, nearly hidden among brown stitches, a line of swallows held the damaged fabric together. Evelyn made many repairs, she said. As far as I know, she made only 1 quilt of her own. The dryers had followed Nora all the way across town. She could still feel their phantom vibration beneath her feet. What happened to it? We thought it was lost. Celia looked at the estate tag, then at Nora. Apparently, she said, it was in the linen closet. Nora looked down at the quilt as if it might object. You're sure it's the same one? No, that was a fast retreat. It was an accurate one. Celia removed her magnifier and set it beside the intake form. I'm sure Evelyn worked on this. I'm sure some of these fabrics are older than either of us. I'm sure the construction is unusual. Anything beyond that requires evidence. What kind? Photographs, dates, people who saw her making it, comparable work, possibly fiber analysis if we get desperate or wealthy. I'm not either. That makes two of us. Celia walked to a tall cabinet and opened its lower doors. Inside were binders, archival boxes, and stacks of publications with curled corners. She crouched, pushed aside 3 binders, and pulled out a thin magazine protected in a clear sleeve. The cover showed a basket filled with apples, and the title Kentucky Hands in peeling green letters. Celia placed it beside the quilt, but did not remove it from the sleeve. She turned to a page marked by a faded receipt. The photograph was black and white, and smaller than Nora expected. Evelyn sat on the porch of the house, one ankle crossed over the other, holding a quilt across her knees. She was younger, but unmistakable, with her chin lifted as if the photographer had interrupted useful work. Only part of the quilt was visible, a dark star, a row of pale rectangles, the edge of a curved block near Evelyn's elbow. Nora looked from the photograph to the cloth on the table. That star leans the same way. It does. Grandma would hate that. She did. The photographer asked if she wanted to straighten the quilt before he took the picture. She told him if he wanted a straight quilt, he should photograph someone else's. A brief caption ran beneath the image. Evelyn Bell with a work in progress, the keeping quilt. Bell, a private textile repairer, builds new cloth from the remains of old. Nora read it twice. She had this in a magazine, a regional craft journal. Circulation was maybe 800, and half the subscribers were libraries that forgot to cancel. She never showed me. She may not have kept a copy. She kept expired coupons from 2009. Celia rested one finger on the sleeve. Evelyn agreed to be interviewed because the editor was a friend of mine. She regretted it before the photographer packed his tripod. Nora examined the woman in the picture. Evelyn's hair was dark, except at the temples. Her hands rested openly on the quilt. Nora knew those hands with swollen knuckles and yellowed nails, but not these capable younger versions of them. What did the article say? Very little. Evelyn answered questions as if words came out of a limited annual supply. That didn't improve with age. She said the quilt was made from pieces left after repair jobs, not valuable pieces, things too worn, stained, or ordinary to return to the owners. She called them leavings. Nora glanced at the faded red block. Why did people ask you about it? Because the photograph was interesting. Because Evelyn's repair work developed a quiet reputation. And because she agreed to put the quilt in a folk art exhibition, then withdrew it a week before the opening. Why? She said the labels were stupid, were they? Yes. Nora smiled before she could stop herself. Celia continued. After that, people occasionally ask whether it had been sold. I asked her once. She told me to mind my own work. Years later, someone said it had been stored in a building that flooded. I had no reason to doubt it. It was on the top shelf with 2 electric blankets and a bag of clothespins. Evelyn might have considered that a secure archive. Nora reached toward the photograph, but stopped before touching the sleeve. If it's the same quilt, what does that mean? That depends on what you're asking. How much it's worth. Celia's expression did not change, but something in the room did. The ordinary noises from the clinic seemed to draw closer, murmured disappointments, hopeful laughter, the rustle of tissue paper around somebody's embroidered table runner. Nora put the cup down harder than she intended. I need a place to live, she said. My car sounds like there's a fork in the engine. I spent $82 on a quilt my family should have let me take for free. So, yes, I'm asking about money. I wasn't judging you. You paused. I paused before numbers because people remember the number and forget every word around it, then say the words first. Celia regarded her for a moment. If this can be documented as the keeping quilt, and if the condition is stable enough, it would have a market. Evelyn's reputation among collectors was built on restoration, not original work, which makes the only known quilt of her own more interesting. Interesting does not mean priceless. It does not mean instant. It may mean several $1,000s. It may mean more. It may also mean less once we understand the damage. Nora's stomach tightened at several thousand. She saw the room above the laundromat, the dragging car transmission, the direct deposit divided before it arrived. How damaged is it? I don't know yet. You keep saying that. It's one of my better habits. Celia turned the quilt to expose the loose corner. This edge is vulnerable, but the thread has pulled free rather than broken. The batting is compressed. There's discoloration, likely from storage and use, possibly smoke. Definitely body oils. Grandma slept under it. That explains the oils. She also ate crackers in bed. That may explain future discoveries. Celia took a small flashlight from the drawer and shone it across the quilt at a low angle. The stitches cast tiny shadows. Some blocks had been quilted densely, others barely at all. "Look here," she said. Nora leaned closer. A blue rectangle contained several lines of stitching that ended abruptly at a seam. On the other side, in flowered fabric, the stitches resumed in a different direction. "Different hands?" Nora asked. "Possibly." Or Evelyn changed her grip. This wasn't made in one sitting, or even one period of her life. Some pieces are worn from use before they were added. Others were cut from relatively strong cloth. The quilt was growing while it was being used. That seems backward. It is, if the goal is to finish. Nora thought of Evelyn's kitchen drawer full of string, rubber bands, take-out forks, and exactly one birthday candle. Nothing in the house had been permitted to complete its usefulness on schedule. "Can you fix the corner?" "I can stabilize it. I won't do more until we understand what Evelyn intended." What if she intended to finish it and died? Then someone has to decide whether completion honors the object or changes it into something else. Someone meaning me? You own it. The words landed strangely. Dale had used them about her living at the house. "You know it isn't yours." Celia said the opposite without ceremony. Nora glanced at the tag. "I have a receipt. Keep it." "Is that appraiser advice?" "It's living in the world advice." Celia asked whether she could keep the quilt overnight to photograph both sides under controlled light. "No." The answer came so quickly that Celia raised an eyebrow. Nora folded her arms. "You just told me not to let anyone take it. I am the person who told you. You also said people have been asking about it for 25 years. That is true. And I met you 30 minutes ago." Celia considered this, then nodded. Also true. She did not tell Nora she was being difficult or irrational. She pulled a wheeled photography stand from the wall. "Then we'll do it now," she said. "It will take about an hour." The clinic ended around them while Celia worked. Her assistant stacked chairs and shut down the front desk. One by one, people carried their objects out into the evening, some smiling, some holding them more carefully than when they entered. Celia photographed the quilt in sections with a numbered scale along each edge. Nora helped move it, following instructions not to lift from the binding. Up close, the fabric became a landscape of ordinary wear. Pale circles marked old buttons. A narrow brown strip contained the ghost of a removed pocket. One green patch had a line of tiny holes where a hem had been picked out. "Clothes," Nora said. "Some of it." This was a sleeve, probably. Nora touched the air above the old button marks. "Whose?" "That's the real work." Celia gave her a list of names from the article's acknowledgments and from her own memory. Mavis Treadwell, who had cut fabric at a garment plant before it closed. Lorna Givens, a former waitress who once brought Evelyn a wedding quilt, sliced clean through the middle. James Pike, whose sisters had commissioned repairs after their mother died. Celia warned that some people might be gone, and others might remember what they wished had happened, rather than what did. "Memory is not fiber analysis," she said. "It's cheaper. Usually." Mavis Treadwell's phone number still appeared in the directory Celia used. Nora copied it onto the back of her hotel schedule. "What am I supposed to say?" "Say you have Evelyn's quilt and you're trying to identify the fabrics. That sounds like a scam. Then don't ask for her social security number." When the photographs were finished, Celia showed Nora how to cradle the quilt in an undyed cotton sheet. The clear housekeeping bag went into the trash. "Plastic can trap moisture," Celia said. "It kept hotel locker smell off it." "Your coat is keeping hotel locker smell on everything else." Nora lifted one sleeve and sniffed. "Industrial lemon." Celia almost smiled. She wrote a preliminary assessment in careful block letters and charged Nora the advertised $20, no more. At the bottom, beneath notes about loose binding and surface soil, she added, "Probable work by Evelyn Bell. Further documentation required." "Do I call Mavis before you do anything?" Nora asked. "You call Mavis because cloth has a social life. If this quilt is what I think it is, the people connected to it matter as much as the stitches. And if it isn't, They still matter. Nora wrapped the quilt in the cotton sheet and carried it down the studio steps. Celia locked the door behind her, then stood under the porch light while Nora tried to arrange the bundle in the passenger seat without bending it. "Did Evelyn ever mention me?" Celia asked. Nora paused. There were kind lies, and there were lies that only postponed another person's hurt. Evelyn had not spoken Celia's name. She had barely spoken about the years before Nora moved into the house. "No," Nora said. Celia looked toward the dark studio window. "That sounds like her, too." Nora settled the quilt and closed the car door. Her phone rang before she reached the driver's side. Dale's name lit the screen. She nearly declined it, then answered. "You left a mess in the sewing room," he said, without hello. "What mess?" "Boxes, fabric, old machine parts. The buyers are doing their final walkthrough Monday." Mallory tagged the sewing room. "Well, nobody bought most of it." "Then I'll come tomorrow. We're taking the leftovers to the dump at 9. Nora looked through the glass at the wrapped quilt. In the appraisal photograph, Evelyn's hands had rested on it, as if she expected somebody to challenge her, right to hold it. "Don't throw anything away," Nora said. Dale exhaled. "It's scraps, Nora. I said I'll come. You can't keep every useless thing because it belonged to her." Nora thought of the old sleeve, the button marks, the stitches holding weakened cloth without forcing it flat. "No," she said. Apparently Grandma already did that. Dale had already put the boxes on the curb when Nora arrived at 8:40. They sat in the wet grass beside 3 black trash bags and the disassembled quilt frame, all of it darkened by a light morning drizzle. A cardboard flap had collapsed over a box of fabric, exposing a roll of batting that drank water like bread and soup. Nora braked so hard the car made its grinding complaint. "You said 9? Dale stood on the porch with a travel mug. "You said tomorrow." "It is tomorrow. I didn't know if you'd show. You put it outside before the time you gave me. It's barely raining." Nora lifted the wet box. The bottom sagged immediately. "Then put your wallet out here." Dale watched her struggle across the yard. He did not help until one flap tore and a bundle of flowered cotton slid onto the walkway. Then he set down his mug and caught it before it hit the mud. "Careful," Nora snapped. "I'm the one holding it. That's why I'm worried." He passed it over without answering. The house's front room had been stripped to pale walls and dust outlines. Without furniture, the rooms looked smaller, as if Evelyn's belongings had been holding the house open. The walnut chest was gone, along with the dining table, brass lamps, ceramic rooster, and every other object that had interrupted the empty echo. Nora carried the box upstairs. Dale followed with the quilt frame pieces tucked under one arm. "Where are you taking all this?" "My room." "You can't fit that frame in a room. I can fit it better than the landfill can. It's warped, it folds, it's 6 feet long. So was Grandma's opinion of you." Dale leaned the frame against the sewing room wall. "You've been waiting years to use these, haven't you? I didn't think I'd get the whole set in 1 week." The sewing room smelled of damp cardboard and the lavender sachets Evelyn tucked into drawers. Or had tucked into drawers. The white treadle machine was gone, sold to a restaurant owner who planned to put it beside the restrooms as decoration. Its pale outline remained on the floorboards. Nora had learned to sew at that machine. Evelyn had refused to let her use the electric one until she could guide cloth without a motor running away with your judgment. She opened the built-in cabinet. Empty. "Where's the sewing basket?" Dale shrugged. "What basket?" "The brown one with the green lining. It was right here. If it was tagged, it sold. It wasn't in the sale. Then Patrice probably took it. Patrice doesn't sew. Neither do half the people who bought this stuff." Nora searched the drawers anyway. She found 3 loose bobbins, a tailor's chalk worn to a blue pebble, bent pins, and a thimble that had split along the side. The basket was not there. Mallory appeared in the doorway wearing leggings, a rain jacket, and the expression of someone who had hoped to enter after the argument. "You came," she said. "What happened to Grandma's sewing basket?" Mallory looked into the room. "Which one?" "The only one she used every day. There were like 6 baskets. Brown, green lining, hinged lid." "Oh." Mallory pulled at one cuff. "I don't remember." Nora knew a lie when it arrived overdressed. "Did you sell it?" "I said I don't remember. Was it before or after you took my picture?" Dale stepped between them with the authority of a man who had created the problem and now wished to manage its tone. "We're not doing this." Mallory looked at him. Nobody asked you. The surprise on Dale's face almost pleased Nora. Mallory walked past him and crouched beside the lowest cabinet. There are 2 more boxes under here. I told him not to move them until you looked. She pulled one out. Inside were narrow strips of fabric rolled around pieces of cardboard, each secured with a straight pin. Evelyn had organized them by color, though her categories were personal. A bundle labeled blue included gray, green, and something close to black. Another labeled white was almost entirely beige. Dale stared into the box. That is trash. Mallory shut the lid. Then it won't hurt you if she takes it. He looked from one woman to the other. Fine, take all of it, but it goes today. The new owners are paying for an empty house. Nora glanced at the walls. They're getting one. The frame would not fit in her car. Even folded, the longest pieces extended from the dashboard to the rear window. Nora tried the trunk, then angled them through the passenger door, then stood in the drizzle with both hands on her hips, as if disappointment might shrink wood. Mallory leaned against the porch rail. I have tie-downs. Of course you do. I sell houses in a truck. You sell houses from a truck. Do you want help or precision? Together they strapped the frame to Mallory's roof rack. The boxes went into Nora's back seat, along with a bag of muslin, 2 wooden hoops, and a tin filled with buttons that Dale had dismissed after learning none were silver. Nora left 3 bags behind. One held fabric so mildewed that the smell caught in her throat. One contained foam cushion pieces crumbling into yellow dust. The last was full of magazines with patterns cut from them and pages stuck together from a leak in the roof. She opened that bag twice before setting it back down. You can't save wet paper, Mallory said. I know. They're not useful now. I know. Mallory did not touch her. She simply stood beside the bag while Nora tied it shut. On the drive back, the boxes filled the car with lavender and basement damp. Nora kept one hand against the button tin on the passenger seat so it would not slide during turns. At Delgado's, Mrs. Delgado came outside, looked at the frame tied to Mallory's truck, and said, No. It folds, Nora said. No, it's my grandmother's. That makes it sad, not small. Mallory covered a laugh with a cough. Mrs. Delgado folded her arms. There is a storage cage behind the boiler room. It has Christmas decorations and 1 bicycle nobody claims. You can put wood there for 1 month. I can pay you. You cannot. I get paid Friday, and Friday you pay me. Nora glanced at Mallory, who had become intensely interested in the tie-down buckle. Thank you, Nora said. 1 month, Mrs. Delgado repeated. After that, the sad wood needs a future. They carried the frame into the basement. When the final piece was stacked against the cage wall, Mallory loosened her ponytail and redid it. I'm sorry about the picture, she said. Nora kept her attention on the warped crossbar. Which one? Both. The second one was a nice close-up. I was trying to make it less awful, by making it funny. That works in our family. For the person with the phone. Mallory winced. I deleted them. From your phone? From the chat. You can't delete other people seeing something. I know. Nora waited for her cousin to mention the sewing basket. Mallory did not. She left after making Nora promise to text if the roof straps had scratched her truck. Nora carried the boxes upstairs 2 at a time and stacked them around the narrow bed. By noon, her room looked as if the estate sale had developed roots and followed her. The quilt remained wrapped in cotton on the bed. Nora sat beside it with Celia's list and dialed Mavis Treadwell. A woman answered on the 7th ring. If this is about my roof, I already have a roof. It's not. Then you're ahead of the last 3. My name is Nora Bell. Evelyn Bell was my grandmother. Silence. Nora could hear a television in the background and the faint clink of something being said on a hard surface. You sound like Ruth, Mavis said. Ruth was Nora's mother. Hearing the name in a stranger's mouth tightened something under her ribs. I've been told. You probably hate being told. I do. Then I'll only say it once. Nora turned the hotel schedule over and found Celia's notes. Celia Mercer gave me your number. I have a quilt that belonged to Grandma. She thought you might recognize some of the fabric. Celia still treating cloth like it can testify? She used a flashlight on it. That woman would shine a flashlight on gravy. Mavis asked 3 questions about the quilt's size, backing, and binding. Her voice lost its suspicion by degrees. Is there blue shirting near the middle? She asked. Not denim, dark blue with a pale stripe. Nora unfolded one edge, careful to keep the cotton sheet beneath it. The quilt occupied most of the bed. There's a blue rectangle next to a flowered piece. It has little holes from a pocket. Mavis inhaled. You bring it here, she said. Today? You got another grandmother's quilt demanding your afternoon? Mavis lived 10 minutes outside town in a brick ranch house with a porch crowded by empty flower pots. Nora found her waiting at the door, in a purple sweatshirt and lipstick, too bright for noon. She was 78, narrow through the shoulders, with white hair cut bluntly at her jaw. She did not greet Nora so much as step aside and point toward the dining table. Not on the couch. My sister spilled wine there in 1996, and I don't trust old sins. Nora spread the cotton sheet first, Mavis noticed. Celia trained you already? She made one suggestion. She never makes one of anything. The quilt opened across the table. Mavis put both hands flat on the edge without touching the cloth. Whatever joke she had prepared disappeared. Well, she said. Nora waited. Mavis's gaze traveled from block to block, stopping at the blue rectangle with the missing pocket. She lowered herself into a chair. That was my plant coat? You're sure? I wore it 11 years. I'd know it if you buried me in it. She pointed to a row of tiny pale marks. Name tag. M. Treadwell. We worked at Dalton Garment until it closed. Last week there, Evelyn came by to mend a split in my good winter coat. I gave her the blue one because I was mad and didn't want to carry anything home from that place. Grandma worked there? No. Evelyn said production sewing was what happened when you took all the pleasure out of being exact. That sounds like her. She also said we were the best cutters in 3 counties, usually in the same breath. Mavis traced the shape of the removed pocket in the air. People called us unskilled after the plant closed. Men in clean shoes came in and said we needed retraining, like our hands had been wasting everybody's time. Nora looked at the dozens of pieces joined across the table. Is that why she made it? She'd started with repair scraps. After the plant shut down, some of us brought her things. Work shirts, aprons, pieces we couldn't explain keeping. Why didn't she tell anyone? Mavis looked at her. She did tell us. The answer stung more than it should have. Not me. No, Mavis said quietly. Not you. She rose and went to a kitchen drawer. From it, she brought a red waitress's apron with one tie nearly severed. Lorna Givens wore the flowered piece beside mine. She's alive, unless me avoiding her finally killed her. Nora took the apron tie automatically, rubbing the torn edge between her fingers. This needs an insert, she said. If I just stitch across, it'll tear again. Mavis watched her hands. What do you charge? For what? To repair things. I work at a hotel. That wasn't my question. Nora looked from the damaged apron to Evelyn's quilt. I don't know. Figure it out, Mavis said, then fix mine first. Nora named $20 because it was the first number that did not sound insulting in either direction. Mavis snorted. For rebuilding a tie? It isn't rebuilding. You said it needed an insert. That's reinforcement. You make it sound cheaper on purpose? Nora examined the torn apron. The fabric had softened almost to flannel, though it had begun life as sturdy red twill. One tie was intact. The other had split close to the waistband where years of pulling had weakened it. 25, Nora said, plus materials. I have materials. Materials don't become free because your grandmother died with them. Mavis took a checkbook from the drawer and wrote $35 before Nora had agreed. Her handwriting was large and square, pressing through the duplicate sheet beneath. You always this difficult? Nora asked. Evelyn thought so. You were friends. We were frequently in the same room. That's not the same thing. It is at my age. Mavis tore out the check and set it on the apron. Then she returned to the quilt. Up close, she recognized more than fabric. In one pale block, a line of quilting curved sharply around a stain. That's June Pike's work, she said. She couldn't make a straight line if you gave her a ruler and held her wrist. You all stitched on this? Sometimes. Mostly Evelyn did. Thursday nights, we'd bring repairs over. She had that big table in the dining room before Dale scratched it dragging in a television. He blamed the delivery men. He would. Nora tried to picture Evelyn opening her house every Thursday. In the years Nora had lived there, Thursday evenings had meant Wheel of Fortune, soup, and Evelyn pretending not to wait for the phone to ring. The dining table had held pills, grocery flyers, and baskets of cloth, but never a group of women sewing. When did you stop coming? Mavis's gaze stayed on the crooked quilting line. A while back. That's not a date. You charging me to repair an apron or conduct an investigation? Depends what investigations pay. Mavis gave her a dry look. The group scattered. June moved away. Lorna and I had words. Evelyn decided company interfered with her concentration, though she was the one doing most of the talking. What were the words about? None of your business. Celia said, cloth has a social life. Celia says things like that because nobody will let her host a radio program. Mavis folded her arms, but the silence after the joke had weight. We wanted names on it, she said finally. Not ownership. Names. If the quilt went into that exhibition, we wanted people to know where the cloth came from. Evelyn said names would turn it into a memorial, and nobody was dead yet. So she withdrew it. She said the labels were stupid. Celia said they were. They were. Mavis sounded irritated by the agreement. One called us homemakers preserving traditions. I cut men's shirts in a factory for 26 years. Lorna carried 6 plates on one arm and could tell from across a dining room when somebody was about to skip out on a check. June ran payroll at the feed store. We weren't sitting on a porch preserving anything. We were trying not to waste what our hands knew. Nora looked at the old buttonholes and opened hems. Did you want her to sell it? No. I wanted her to stop acting like the only choices were hiding it upstairs or letting some fool describe us as quaint. What did she want? Mavis's expression shifted. To keep working on it, I suppose. Nora glanced at the unfinished corner. She didn't finish. Evelyn considered finished a kind of surrender. That was almost funny, except Nora could see the final weeks. Evelyn's hands trembling too badly to thread a needle, her anger when Nora tried to help fasten a button, the bedroom light turned off before sunset, because being awake had become another task she could not complete alone. Did she ever talk about me? Mavis did not pretend to misunderstand. She said you made crooked buttonholes. I made one crooked buttonhole. She described it several times. That sounds more like her. She also said you could feel weakness in cloth before you saw it. Mavis touched her own plant coat block with one finger. Said you had good hands and no sense. About what? Yourself, mostly. Nora waited for more. Mavis gave none. Why didn't she tell me about any of this? Maybe she thought you knew. She knew I didn't. Then maybe she didn't want you to see what she couldn't do anymore. The answer was too generous to Evelyn and too plausible to dismiss. Nora began folding the quilt onto its cotton sheet. Mavis helped without being asked. Lorna will recognize 3 or 4 pieces. You have her number? I have everybody's number. Speaking to them is separate. Will you call her? No. Mavis, don't use that tone. You just met me. You brought her up. I warned you she existed. Nora tucked the sheet around the quilt. What were your words about? Mavis lifted the apron and check from the table. Bring this back Friday. Good work, even stitches. No visible patch on the front. That's a lot for $35. That's why you should have priced it higher. Mrs. Delgado allowed Nora to use a corner table in the wash and fold after closing, provided she kept every pin in a magnetic dish. People take off pants before checking pockets, she said. They wash screws, lipstick, money, car keys, one dental bridge. A pin gets in my dryer. It comes out angry. Nora cut the reinforcement from a strip of red cotton twill in Evelyn's blue box. That is not blue, Mrs. Delgado said. It was in the blue box. Your grandmother had eye trouble? No, she had categories. Mrs. Delgado considered this and nodded as if categories explained more than color ever could. Nora worked the new fabric inside the tie, beyond the torn area on both sides, tapering the ends so the repair would flex. The hotel taught speed. Torn sheets needed to return to circulation before anyone noticed inventory was short. Evelyn had taught patience. A repair that made the surrounding cloth carry all the strain was only moving the failure. The apron required both. At midnight, Nora tied it around her own waist and pulled until the fabric held. The red insert remained hidden. From the front, only a short line of stitches showed where the tear had been. Mrs. Delgado inspected it. Too cheap. You don't know what I charged. You live upstairs. I know. The next afternoon, Tanya examined the repair during their break. She turned the apron inside out, ran a thumbnail along the inserted cloth, and nodded. You did this by hand? Machine would chew the old twill. How long? 2.5 hours. And what did you charge? $35. Tanya slid the apron back across the break room table. That's $14 an hour before materials. I didn't pay for the material, your grandmother did. Apparently everybody is taking her side on this. Dead women are persuasive. Nora folded the apron and placed it in a grocery bag. The check from Mavis remained in her wallet. She had not deposited it yet. It felt less like money than a dare. Her phone buzzed. Dale, keys by 5. Buyers walk through at 5:30. The front key had shared a ring with Nora's car key for 6 years. She removed it in the hotel parking lot and immediately lost it between the seats. By the time she found it, the brass was warm from her hand. The house waited with every light on. Dale stood in the kitchen beside the realtor, speaking in a low voice about a stain beneath the refrigerator. The empty rooms made him sound important. Nora walked past without interrupting. Upstairs, Evelyn's bedroom door was open. The lines where the bed legs had pressed into the carpet were already lifting. Somebody had vacuumed in careful overlapping paths. Nora went to the linen closet. The shelf where the quilt had rested held one wire hanger and a dead moth. She could not remember the first night she had slept in the house. She remembered hundreds of ordinary ones instead. The plumbing knocking, Evelyn shouting answers at game shows, sleet ticking against the windows, the bedside lamp visible under Evelyn's door when she claimed she had not been waiting up. Nora closed the closet. Mallory found her on the stairs. "I thought you already moved everything," Mallory said. "I came to return the key." "Oh." Mallory looked toward the front room, then lowered her voice. "Did you get the quilt fixed?" "Not yet. Are you going to wash it?" "No, it smells kind of... I know what it smells like." Mallory shifted aside to let her pass, but Nora did not move. "Did you find the sewing basket?" Nora asked. "No." The answer was ready. Nora studied her cousin's face. Mallory rubbed one thumb over the edge of her phone case. "Okay," Nora said. She went downstairs and placed the key in Dale's palm. He closed his fingers around it. "You get all your scraps?" "Most of them. I wasn't trying to rush you. You put them in the rain. It was drizzle." Nora looked past him at the clean square where Evelyn's refrigerator had stood. "I hope the house sells fast enough to make today worth it." His mouth tightened. "You think I wanted this? I think you got very good at wanting whatever happened." The realtor stepped into the kitchen and then stepped out again. Dale's voice dropped. "Mom made choices. We're all dealing with them. So did you." Nora left before the buyers arrived. Mavis opened her front door with the repaired apron already tied over her purple sweatshirt. She tugged the restored tie twice, hard. "Show off," Nora said. "I'm testing it. You're trying to break it so you can get your money back." Mavis handed her the same check, now folded in half. "I called Lorna." Nora blinked. "You said you wouldn't. I changed my mind in private. It's one of my better qualities. And she called me a controlling old heifer. That sounds promising. She also said the flowered rayon came from her first good waitress uniform. There's a gold-colored piece near the lower edge she wants to see." Mavis untied the apron and folded it carefully. She said to bring the quilt Sunday. And she said if Celia Mercer is involved, nobody is putting it under museum glass before Lorna tells the truth about Evelyn. What truth? Mavis tucked the repaired tie inside the fold. She wouldn't say. "Do you know? I know several truths about Evelyn. That's the trouble with knowing someone a long time." Mavis looked toward the quiet dining table where the quilt had lain. "You never know which truth has finally come to collect." Lorna Givens opened the door before Nora knocked. "You're late." Nora checked her phone. "It's 11:58. You were supposed to be here at noon. If you're early, I get to judge your clothes before we discuss serious matters." Lorna was 81 and wore a copper-colored blouse, black slacks, and enough gold jewelry to make the hallway light warmer. Her silver hair stood in soft waves around her face. She looked past Nora toward the driveway. "You brought Mavis? She said you invited her." "I invited the quilt. Mavis travels inside consequences." Mavis climbed out of her sedan carrying a foil-covered pie. "I heard that," she called. "You were meant to." Nora held the wrapped quilt across both arms. "Should I come back when one of you wins?" "We'd all be dead," Mavis said. "Speak for yourself," Lorna replied, stepping aside. "And don't put Evelyn on the couch. I had it cleaned." The dining room had been prepared with a white sheet over the table, and all 4 chairs moved against the wall. Lorna had also set out coffee, pie plates, cloth napkins, and a yellow waitress's order pad with a pen clipped to the top. "You taking orders?" Nora asked. "I think better when everyone else is eating." Mavis lifted the foil. Peach, I made coffee cake. Then now we have choices. We had choices before you came. Nora laid the cotton-wrapped bundle on the table. Wait, Lorna said. Celia's coming. Mavis closed her eyes. Why? Because if she tells anybody this quilt belongs under glass, I want to be present when I throw her out. You invited an appraiser to threaten her? I have limited hobbies. The doorbell rang. Celia entered carrying 2 flat cases and a camera bag. She greeted Mavis cautiously, Lorna without caution at all, and Nora with a look that stopped on the quilt. You transported it flat? As flat as my car allows. Good. Lorna pointed toward a chair. Put down your instruments and have coffee. I'd rather examine it first. That's why you need coffee. You're already making poor decisions. They opened the quilt together. Daylight spread across the surface, bringing up colors Nora had not seen under Celia's work lamp. The flowered rayon near Mavis's blue block held small bursts of white and orange. Lorna touched one flower, then pressed 2 fingers to her mouth. Lord, she said, I hated that uniform. Mavis sat beside her. You said it made your waist look small. My waist was small. The uniform took credit. Lorna had worn it at the Blue Lantern, a restaurant off the old highway where salesmen, plant workers, and families stopped for fried catfish and lemon icebox pie. The owner required waitresses to wear flowered dresses because he thought solid colors looked unfriendly. I wore through the right hip from carrying my order book, she said. Evelyn patched it twice. When the Blue Lantern changed uniforms, I gave her the whole dress. You knew it was going in the quilt? Nora asked, eventually. At first I thought she wanted the buttons. Celia photographed the block while Lorna spoke. She did not interrupt, except to confirm dates, and Lorna answered each question with the irritated precision of somebody who had been waiting years to be asked correctly. The gold-colored piece sat close to the lower binding. It was dull satin, quilted over with irregular lines that crossed one another and turned back. Lorna placed her hand beside it. That came out of my wedding quilt. Mavis got up to cut the pie. You can stay, Lorna told her. I've heard this story. You've heard your version. I like mine better. Lorna's wedding quilt had been pieced by her mother and aunts from gold satin and cream cotton. Decades later, when Lorna discovered her husband had been meeting another woman every Tuesday while claiming to bowl, she took his fishing knife and cut the quilt from top to bottom. Not a clean cut, Lorna said. I was enthusiastic. You brought it to Evelyn? Nora asked. 3 days after he left. I told her to make 2 quilts out of it. What did she say? She said anger was not a measuring tool. Mavis set pie slices onto plates. Then she called him something impolite. She did. Evelyn had repaired the quilt rather than dividing it. She inserted narrow strips of strong fabric beneath the cuts and secured the satin without hiding every scar. When Lorna complained that the damage remained visible, Evelyn told her visible and broken were not the same thing. She kept the pieces she trimmed out, Lorna said, touching the gold block. That's one of them. Nora saw the old knife marks once she knew where to look. Small notches interrupted the edge beneath the quilting. Did you keep the repaired quilt? It's on my bed. After all that, it was my mother's work before it was my marriage. Mavis handed Lorna a plate. That only took you 12 years to figure out. It took you 14 to stop asking. Celia bent over the gold satin. These lines are different from Evelyn's. They're mine, Lorna said. She made me quilt that section during Thursday nights. Said if I was going to cut something, I could help put it back into the world. Celia compared the stitches to the lines in the blue block. And these? She asked Mavis. Mavis reluctantly set down her fork. Some might be mine. You told me they were June's, Nora said. The crooked part is June's. The part trying to correct her is mine. Celia's mouth twitched. This matters. Lorna's eyes sharpened. Here it comes. Glass box. No. Attribution. It was Evelyn's quilt. It was. But you contributed labor, not only material. The description should say that. Mavis pointed her fork at Lorna. Names. Don't begin. You're the one who called Celia. I called her to prevent theft by vocabulary. Celia looked at Nora. Do you see what I was dealing with? Starting to. Lorna cut into the coffee cake instead of Mavis's pie. The truth is that Evelyn didn't make this as a piece of art. Mavis set down her fork. Celia said, That distinction isn't as clean as you think. I know what I mean. She made it because people kept bringing her things that were too damaged to use and too important to throw away. She said there ought to be one place where worn-out cloth didn't have to justify taking up room. The sentence settled over the table. Nora thought of the boxes Dale had put in the rain. She thought of the checkout sheet at the hotel, where stained linens were marked discard, even when the fabric remained strong. She didn't call it the keeping quilt, Lorna continued. That magazine woman did. Evelyn called it the work quilt. The article quoted the title, Celia said. Evelyn let people hear what saved time. Mavis looked at the quilt. She used keeping quilt after the article, because she enjoyed proving herself right. About what? That people behave better around a noun if you put the in front of it. Nora laughed. Celia did too, quietly. Why did she withdraw it from the exhibition? Nora asked. Lorna and Mavis exchanged a look. The label, Mavis said. More than the label, Lorna replied. They wanted it hung high enough that nobody could touch it. They wanted Evelyn to repair the stains, square the sides, and finish the border. Celia straightened. I didn't know that. You weren't in the room. I was helping organize the show. You were outside arguing about humidity. That was my job, and Evelyn's job was saying no. Lorna smoothed her napkin over her knee. They wanted the quilt to look like it had never spent a night on a bed. That was the truth she wouldn't compromise. It had been under sick people, cold people, people who cried and people who snored. She said cleaning away its use would leave nothing but clever sewing. Nora looked at the brown shadows, the faded center, the corner rubbed thin by Evelyn's feet. The same marks that lowered its value in one sentence seemed to make it heavier in the next. Was Grandma angry with all of you? She asked. We took turns, Mavis said. Lorna considered. She was angry I told her to sign it. That seems reasonable. I said nobody would know what she made after she was gone. She said if the work needed her name to matter, she hadn't made it well enough. That sounds less reasonable. She became less reasonable with practice. Celia opened one of her flat cases and removed a gray scale and measuring tape. She asked Nora's permission before photographing the gold section. That small courtesy did not escape Nora. For the next hour, Lorna and Mavis identified 7 pieces with confidence and argued over 4 more. Blue ticking had come from Mavis's neighbor's work apron. A brown wool strip might have belonged to June Pike's father, or might have been cut from one of Evelyn's own skirts. A pale green curve prompted silence from both women. What? Nora asked. Nothing, Mavis said. Lorna reached for coffee. You both looked at it. We don't recognize everything, Lorna said. The answer came too neatly. Nora looked from them to the green fabric, but Celia moved on without pressing. When the quilt had been folded again, Celia sat with her notebook and spoke carefully. I'm increasingly confident this is the same object in the magazine photograph. The block placement matches. Evelyn's anchoring stitch is present throughout. Today's identifications support the history, and the other hands make the piece more significant, not less. Significant how? Nora asked. As a record of regional textile labor, domestic repair, and a community of makers whose work wasn't normally documented. Money, Lorna said. She means money. I mean both. How much? Mavis asked. Celia looked at Nora before answering. I won't give a formal value until I finish the assessment. Comparable pieces are difficult because Evelyn left no comparable pieces. My preliminary range would be $12,000 to $20,000, depending on condition, documentation, and buyer interest. No one spoke. Nora heard the refrigerator cycle on in the kitchen. $20,000 was not a fortune. It would not buy Evelyn's house or turn Nora into someone who forgot prices. It could buy a reliable car. It could pay rent ahead. It could make the next emergency less certain to win. Mavis was the first to move. She pushed the peach pie toward Nora. You look pale. I'm fine. Then eat while pale. Lorna watched Nora take the plate. Evelyn wouldn't have sold it, she said. Mavis snapped. Evelyn had a house. Nora looked at the wrapped quilt between them. For the first time since the estate sale, $82 no longer felt like the worst decision she had made. It felt like the opening price of a much harder one. Nora ate half the pie because 3 women watched until she did. Mavis pushed the rest of the slice toward her each time Nora's fork slowed. Lorna poured more coffee without asking. Celia closed her notebook and kept her opinions to herself, which somehow made her presence louder. 12 to 20 is a broad range, Nora said. It has to be, Celia replied. A formal appraisal is not a guess with prettier paper. What makes it 12 instead of 20? Documentation, condition, timing, whether two interested buyers exist at the same moment. Lorna scoffed. So, value is rich people standing near each other. Much of the art market could be summarized that way. And if nobody wants it, Nora asked, then the market value is theoretical until somebody does. Mavis tapped the pie server against the plate. A person can't pay rent with theory. Nobody is asking her to. Lorna's voice had cooled. I said Evelyn wouldn't sell it. I did not say Nora couldn't. You said it while looking at her like that. This is my face. You've had decades to improve it. Nora set down her fork. Could both of you stop deciding what I'm doing before I decide? They stopped. The effect was so immediate she almost apologized. Celia folded her glasses and slid them into her case. The first step is a condition assessment. That should happen whether you sell, insure, exhibit, or keep it under your bed. It's on top of my bed. Better for airflow, worse for coffee. How much does the assessment cost? $450. Nora laughed. Celia did not. You charge $450 to tell me it's stained? I charge $450 to map every area of damage, test fabric and thread stability, identify prior repairs, document current condition, and recommend treatment. I can tell you it's stained for free. Then let's enjoy the free service. You don't have to do it now. If I want a formal appraisal, I need enough condition information to support the number. Nora looked at the quilt beneath its cotton sheet. Every new possibility seemed to arrive, holding an invoice. Mavis said, I'll pay. No. That was quick. It was accurate. You helped me. You paid me. Poorly, apparently. Lorna opened her mouth. No, Nora said. Nobody pays for it except me. Celia picked up her camera case. Then take time. Objects wait better than people. Not this one. The corner's coming apart. The corner can be temporarily stabilized without a full treatment. Bring it Wednesday. I'll show you how. You'll show me? I have seen your apron repair. Nora looked at Mavis. Mavis appeared innocent in a way that required effort. She sent photographs, Celia said. Front, back, and one beside a ruler. For scale, Mavis explained. I know what a ruler does. Celia's eyes rested on Nora's hands. Your insert extended past the weak area. You match the direction of the twill. The new stitches are long enough to flex and short enough to distribute strain. Is that praise? It's an observation. Sounds familiar. Celia lifted one shoulder. I learned from Evelyn. Nora carried the quilt out before Mavis and Lorna could begin another argument about who should pay for what. On the porch, Mavis caught up and pressed a plastic container into her free hand. Pie, she said. I know. For later. I already ate. Later is famous for happening again. The repair work multiplied in small, inconvenient shapes. Mrs. Delgado left 2 curtain panels outside Nora's door, with a note that said, Hem, not charity. Tanya brought a wool coat, whose lining had split under one arm, and offered $40 after calculating what Nora had undercharged Mavis. Mavis told the woman from her church about the apron, and the woman called during Nora's shift to describe 6 dining chair cushions, as though Nora might diagnose them over the sound of industrial dryers. By Wednesday, 3 grocery bags of other people's damaged things stood beside Evelyn's fabric boxes. Nora worked after the laundromat closed. The folding table wobbled. The overhead lights made every color look ill, and the dryers beneath the floor stopped vibrating at 11, leaving a silence so sudden it felt like the building had lost power. She repaired one curtain hem, opened the wool coat lining, and spent 20 minutes searching Evelyn's boxes for black thread she finally found in a tin marked brown. At 1 in the morning, she fell asleep sitting against the bed with the quilt wrapped beside her. Her phone alarm woke her at 5:30. At the hotel, Tanya caught her feeding a tablecloth into the press crooked. Stop. I see it. You didn't until it was halfway in. Nora hit the release pedal. The press lifted with a hiss. They tugged the tablecloth straight. Tanya examined her. You look terrible. Thank you. Not regular tired. Religious painting tired. I have work. You are at work. Other work. That is why days have numbers. You don't use all of them at once. Nora rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands. I'm fine. People who are fine don't put a banquet tablecloth through sideways. Maybe the table leans. Tanya did not laugh. Nora looked away first. I'll sleep after Celia's. Is Celia the quilt woman? Textile conservator. You're correcting me like she's contagious. She charges $450 to identify stains. Good work if you can get it. It's more complicated than that. Everything is when somebody bills by the hour. Tanya adjusted the feed roller. Go drink water. I'll cover this machine 10 minutes. Nora started to object. Not grief, Tanya said. Not a timesheet. 10 minutes. Celia's studio felt unnaturally quiet after the hotel. The appraisal clinic tables had been cleared. A large padded work surface occupied the center room beneath banks of daylight-balanced lights. Nora opened the quilt while Celia washed her hands. No gloves? Nora asked. Clean hands feel more than gloves. We use gloves for metal, photographs, and textiles likely to shed something poisonous. Comforting. Celia showed her how to place a temporary support beneath the unfinished corner without adding new stitches. The support was plain cotton washed until no sizing remained. Nora had expected Celia to do the work while she watched. Instead, Celia placed a curved needle in her hand. Based outside the weakened area, she said. You said not to cut or add a thread. I said not to let anybody do it until we knew what this was. We know enough to keep it from becoming less. Nora positioned the needle. Too close, Celia said. Nora moved it. Too far. There are only so many places between those. Yes. They found one. The first stitch took nearly a minute. Nora was accustomed to piercing cloth where her eye chose. Celia made her feel each layer with the needle tip, lifting only the backing and avoiding the old batting. You hold your breath, Celia said, because you're standing over me. I'm 6 feet away. It feels closer. Evelyn used to slap my wrist. Do you want me to thank you? I want you to breathe. Nora breathed. The second stitch lay better. By the fifth, the support held without pulling the edge inward. The corner still looked unfinished, but it no longer opened when moved. Celia inspected the work through her magnifier. Acceptable, she said. That's the nicest thing anyone in this family has ever said to me. I am not in your family. The words should have sounded cold. Instead, they made a clean space in the room. Celia crossed to a row of shelving. I have a backlog of condition photographs that need numbering and matching to intake records. It's dull work. 12 hours this week, $20 an hour. Nora stared at her. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you 12 hours. Because you feel bad for me? Because my assistant started graduate school and now believes she is too intellectually advanced to name image files. Does she know that? I tell her regularly. Celia handed Nora a printed sheet of file conventions. The names included accession numbers, object types, front, back, and detail views. You pay me, Nora said. Then I pay you for the assessment, if you choose to. That sounds like Charity wearing glasses. No, Charity doesn't correct metadata at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. Nora read the first line twice. I work at the hotel until 3. The studio closes at 6, so that's 3 hours. Your arithmetic is strong. Observational praise again. Don't get used to it. Nora took the work. By Friday, she had paid the remaining half of Mrs. Delgado's deposit, bought groceries without checking her account in the checkout line, and completed 4 of Celia's 12 hours. None of it made her secure. It only made the next few days less sharp. When Mallory knocked that evening, Nora was kneeling beside the folding table, pinning Mrs. Delgado's second curtain. I brought your mail. Mallory held up a grocery bag. Some went to the house before closing. Nora let her in. Mallory stopped inside the doorway. Boxes narrowed the path to the bed. The quilt occupied most of the mattress, wrapped but not hidden. A curtain hung over the chair. Tanya's coat lay open across the table. This is cozy, Mallory said. It's a fire marshal's thought experiment. Mallory handed over the bag. Bank stuff. 2 catalogs. Something from the hospital. Nora sorted through envelopes. A padded mailer from Celia's studio contained printed photographs from the appraisal session. On top was the black and white image of Evelyn on the porch beside a color photograph of the quilt as it looked now. Mallory picked them up. Is that Grandma? Yes. With the quilt? Yes. Mallory lowered herself onto the edge of the chair, displacing the curtain. So, it really was hers. Nora looked at her. You thought I bought some other dead woman's blanket? I mean, she made it. Mostly. Mallory studied the magazine caption. The Keeping Quilt. That's what the article called it. Is that appraiser lady sure? Sure enough to keep looking. Mallory's face shifted as she compared the 2 photographs. Is it worth something? Nora could have lied. She remembered the second picture in the group chat, her own face bent over the quilt while her family laughed. Some bruises begged to be pressed just to prove they were still there. Celia's preliminary range is 12 to 20,000. Mallory's mouth opened. The room seemed even smaller around the number. Dollars? No, decorative soaps. Oh my God, it isn't final. You paid 82. I remember. Mallory set the photographs down carefully. Does Mom know? No. Dale? No. Good. The answer came fast. Don't tell them. Nora watched her cousin rub both palms over her knees. Why? Because they'll make it ugly. They already sold it to me. I know, just don't. Mallory left 20 minutes later, after promising to forward Nora's new address to no one without asking. She took none of the mail and mentioned nothing about Evelyn's sewing basket. Nora locked the door behind her. Her phone rang before she had finished returning the photographs to the envelope. Dale's name filled the screen. She let it ring 4 times before answering. His voice was gentle. Too gentle. Nora, he said, we need to talk about your grandmother's quilt. Nora looked at the closed door Mallory had walked through. What about it? Dale exhaled, soft and patient. I'm hearing there may have been some confusion at the sale. There was. You charged me $12 in imaginary tax. This isn't the time to be cute. I wasn't cute when I counted out the money. He paused. Nora could almost hear him reorganizing the conversation. Patrice says you took it to an appraiser. Patrice wasn't there. Is it true? Nora picked up Celia's envelope and slid it beneath the curtain fabric. What did Patrice say? She said it could be valuable. Everything in that house could be valuable. That's why you sold it. You know what I mean? I know you called it a bed cover. The sale company wrote the tags. Mallory wrote the tags. We all had a lot going on. Nora listened to the dryers vibrating beneath the floor. The quilt lay within arm's reach, wrapped in cotton, the corner temporarily supported. Dale continued in the same reasonable tone. If something important was accidentally included in the general sale, then we need to correct that. You put it in the sale after I asked for it. I didn't know what it was. You knew it was Grandma's. We knew it was old bedding. So did the woman who bid against me. She still understood how buying works. His breath sharpened. The estate had an obligation to divide assets fairly. The walnut chest divided nicely into your truck. That was accounted for. Where? This is exactly why we need to sit down, instead of sniping over the phone. No. This is why I have a receipt. I'm not trying to take anything from you. You're calling to return my $82? I'm calling because if the quilt belongs to the estate, it belonged to the estate. The estate sold it. You were living in the house. You had information other buyers didn't. Nora laughed once. You mean I knew Grandma owned a quilt? You knew her habits. You knew what she cared about. If knowing what she cared about mattered, you should have put me in charge. Silence. The words had escaped before Nora could decide whether to use them. Now they sat between them, too accurate to retrieve. When Dale spoke again, the gentleness had thinned. How much is it worth? I don't know. Patrice heard 20,000. Of course she had. Nobody ever carried the lower number intact. It hasn't been formally appraised. So there is an appraisal. Dale, let's not make a family problem out of this. You sold the family problem for $82. She ended the call. Her hands shook afterward, which annoyed her more than anything Dale had said. She placed the phone face down on the table and held the magnetic pin dish with both palms until the small metal circle stopped rattling. The screen lit beneath her fingers. Mallory? I'm sorry. Nora turned it over. Mallory? I called Mom from the car. I thought she should know before Dale heard from somebody else. Mallory. She called him while I was still talking? Mallory. I know. Nora typed. You told me not to tell them. The reply came quickly. Mallory. Because I saw her reaction. Nora stared at that. Mallory. She asked if Grandma knew what it was worth. Then she asked whether estate sales can be reversed. Mallory. I told her no. Nora. After you told her the number. Mallory. Yes. Mallory. I'm sorry. Nora wanted to ask about the sewing basket. She wanted to ask whether Mallory's apologies came with a limit, or only arrived after damage became visible. Instead, she put the phone on silent. Dale preferred family conflict at a diner. Public surroundings improved his behavior, and the endless coffee made him feel meetings were free. He chose a booth at Walker's Grill and sat facing the door. Patrice was beside him in a cream sweater, her blue willow bowl nowhere in sight. Mallory occupied the outer end of the opposite bench, leaving Nora the place against the wall. Nora remained standing. "I have work at 11. This won't take long," Dale said. "Then you won't need pancakes." He had already ordered them. Mallory slid out of the booth. I'll move." "No." Nora sat beside her. "You're fine." Mallory was not fine. She had worried the paper wrapper off her straw and arranged the pieces beside her water glass in diminishing sizes. The waitress poured Nora coffee and left 4 menus. Nobody opened. Dale folded his hands. "I think emotions got ahead of us last night." "Whose?" "Nora," Patrice said. "Please." That word carried an entire childhood of being asked to make other people easier. Dale leaned forward. "We want to offer you $500 for the quilt." Mallory's head snapped up. "You said you were going to ask what she wanted." "I'm starting somewhere." "You're starting at 500? Nora looked at him. "Why 5? It's more than 6 times what you paid. So, you do understand profit." His jaw tightened. Patrice placed one manicured hand on the table. "Nobody is saying you shouldn't benefit. But if Mama's quilt is worth what Mallory heard, that value should be shared. Mama's serving bowl had value. Oh, for heaven's sake. Sell it and share." "I'm not selling the bowl." Nora lifted her coffee. "Then we found common ground. The pancakes arrived." Dale waited while the waitress arranged syrup and butter, then thanked her with a warmth he had not offered anyone at the table. When she left, he said, "The house didn't bring what we expected. It sold before it was listed. The buyers negotiated after inspection. There were foundation repairs, closing costs. Mom had bills. So do I. You don't understand the scale. I understand that $82 was worth humiliating me over until it became worth humiliating yourselves." Mallory pressed both hands around her water glass. Patrice looked toward the counter. "That video was inappropriate." "You laughed." I sent a laughing face. "It was nervous." "That's a very advanced emoji. I'm trying to say it was wrong, then say that." Patrice looked at her. "It was wrong," she said quietly. Dale cut into his pancakes. "Can we stay on the point?" "That was the point for me. The point is that the estate sale was organized under incomplete information. All estate sales are. You had 6 years of access to Mom's belongings. I had 6 years of access to her medication schedule. You also had the chance to remove anything you wanted." Nora set down her cup. "You accused me of planning to take things. Then you priced the one thing I asked for. Now you're accusing me of not taking it secretly. No one is accusing you. You're just building the sentence." Mallory spoke without looking at Dale. "She owns it. I'm aware of her position. It isn't a position. She has the receipt. This is a family discussion, Mallory. I'm in the family when you need listings, photographs, moving boxes, and 12 hours of free work." Patrice turned to her. "Don't make this about you." Mallory laughed in disbelief. "That should go on our crest." Dale put down his fork. Syrup gleamed on the tines. "Fine. Nora owns the quilt. Nobody is dragging it out of her room. We're asking her to recognize that she got lucky with an estate asset everyone else had a right to understand." Nora thought of Evelyn's hands in the magazine photograph. She thought of Mavis's plant coat, Lorna's cut satin, June's wandering stitches. "You still don't understand it. And you do? I'm learning, because an appraiser told you it's worth money. Because I started asking people where it came from." Dale leaned back. "You wash sheets for a living, Nora. Let's not pretend this suddenly makes you a historian." Mallory went still. Patrice closed her eyes. Nora felt the insult arrive in pieces. The first was familiar. The clean, practiced dismissal. The second was stranger. Dale had lived his whole life inside the comfort produced by work he did not notice. Meals, pills, clean clothes, an old woman safe in her own house. Now he used another invisible job to prove Nora could not recognize invisible labor. She reached into her purse and placed the estate sale receipt beside his plate. Read the description. Dale did not touch it. "Bed cover," she said, "as is. You decided what it was worth when you thought I was the only person who wanted it." She stood. Patrice caught her sleeve. Not hard. Just enough to make Nora look down at her hand. "If you sell it," Patrice said, "would you at least tell us first?" There was no demand in her voice this time. Only a small, naked fear that Evelyn had made something none of them knew, and Nora might send it away before they understood. Nora pulled her sleeve free. "I don't know what I'm doing." Dale looked at the receipt. "Then, don't do anything permanent." It was the first sensible thing he had said, which made Nora dislike it more. She left them with the pancakes. At Celia's studio, the condition photographs waited on 2 monitors. Nora entered file names, matched detail images to grid locations, and tried not to assign Dale's face to every puncture and stain. Celia worked at the next table, removing old tape from the back of an embroidered panel. "You're hitting the keys hard," she said. "The computer started it. Computers keep excellent records of revenge." Nora told her about the diner without intending to. She left out Patrice's apology and Mallory's defense. Those details made the story less clean. When she finished, Celia peeled away a strip of brittle adhesive and placed it on release paper. "If you sell," she said, "your family will say the value should have been theirs. I know. If you keep it, they will say you denied everyone a benefit. I know. If you finish the corner, some buyers will consider that an alteration." Nora stopped typing. How much would it change the value? Possibly a great deal, possibly very little. It depends on what you add and how it's documented. So, I shouldn't touch it. That isn't what I said. It sounds like what you said. Celia removed her glasses. Conservation asks what an object has been. Restoration asks what we want it to become. Those questions overlap, but they are not the same. What did Grandma want it to become? That may be the only question money can't answer for you. Nora looked at the photograph on the monitor. The unfinished corner occupied the lower right of the frame. Under the strong light, the pale green curve near it seemed less green than she remembered, almost gray with wear. "Mavis and Lorna recognized that piece," she said. "They said they didn't. They lied." Celia followed her gaze, then asked why. Nora called Mavis from the studio parking lot. The first call went to voicemail. The second was declined. On the third, Mavis answered. "Persistence becomes harassment after dark. It's 6:20. I eat early. The green fabric near the unfinished corner. Whose was it?" Mavis said nothing. "You and Lorna both knew." "We had an idea." "What idea?" "It may have belonged to Ruth." Nora gripped the phone. "My mother? It was a dress," Mavis said. "Green with covered buttons. Evelyn kept more of it than she admitted." Nora looked through the studio window at the quilt's image glowing on the screen. "Why is it in the unfinished corner?" "That," Mavis said, "you'll have to ask Lorna." Lorna answered on the first ring. "You found the green piece." It was not a question. Mavis said it was my mother's dress. Mavis has the restraint of a car alarm. "She made me call you. She made you call by refusing to answer. That woman could direct traffic from inside a locked trunk." Nora leaned against her car. The studio lights behind her made a bright rectangle on the dark pavement. "Why is my mother's dress in the quilt? You want the short answer or the answer you'll interrupt?" "The second one." "Come tomorrow. I'm working." "So am I." "Tomorrow afternoon." "You're retired. Retirement is when you do work, people don't respect for money they don't pay. You should understand that." Lorna hung up. Her house smelled like onions when Nora arrived the next afternoon. A pot simmered on the stove, and the repaired gold wedding quilt had been folded over the back of the couch. Nora stopped beside it. The repair ran nearly the full length. Evelyn had not disguised the cuts. Narrow cream strips reinforced them from beneath, while close lines of hand stitching followed every jagged turn. The gold satin changed shade across the scars, making the damage visible only when light struck from the side. Lorna appeared from the kitchen holding a wooden spoon. "She was right," Nora said. "She usually arranged matters so she would be." "It's not broken." "No, it doesn't look untouched either. That would have been a lie." Lorna returned the spoon to the kitchen and came back with 2 bowls of soup. "I'm not hungry," Nora said. "Young women always tell me that, then eat crackers over the sink. Sit." Nora sat. Lorna did not begin until Nora took the first spoonful. "Your mother wore that green dress to Patrice's anniversary dinner," she said. "The one at the old supper club by the river." Nora remembered the photograph, not the dinner. Ruth stood between Evelyn and Patrice in a pale green dress with covered buttons, her hair pinned back, her smile tilted as though somebody had spoken just before the picture was taken. It was the last family photograph in which everyone still believed there would be another. "Grandma kept it?" Nora asked. Patrice brought Evelyn 2 bags of Ruth's clothes. "Couldn't stand seeing them in her own closet. No one asked me. You were in the house when the bags came. Then why don't I remember? Grief is a poor secretary." Lorna drank her soup. The dress had damage under one arm and a stain down the front. Evelyn said she would repair it. Patrice said not to bother. They argued because neither woman had enough sense to recognize when the other was agreeing to be sad. So, Grandma cut it up. Not right away. It hung in the sewing room for years. By the time she took it apart, the stain had weakened the front. She used what was strong. Nora looked toward the wedding quilt. Did she ask you? She didn't ask me permission to cut Ruth's dress, if that's what you mean. It belonged to my mother. It belonged to Evelyn by then. That's convenient. No. Convenient would have been Patrice throwing the bags away. Nora set down the spoon. Everybody keeps explaining why Grandma did things as if knowing her reasons makes her right. It doesn't. The clean answer stopped Nora. Lorna folded her napkin once. Evelyn should have told you. She should have told you about the dress, the quilt, the Thursday nights, and 100 other things she expected people to understand by standing close enough. She mistook privacy for strength. Then why did you help her? Because people can be wrong without becoming disposable. Outside, a truck passed. The bowls trembled faintly on the table. Why did she put the dress near the unfinished corner? Nora asked. Lorna's eyes moved to the window. She was changing that part. Changing it how? The old corner was mostly plain ticking. She took it apart 2 or 3 years ago and began rebuilding it. Why? She said the quilt had too many women in it who were already gone and not enough of the ones still carrying everything. Nora's throat tightened. Did she say my name? She didn't have to. You just told me that was her problem. Yes, Lorna said, and now it's ours. Nora stood and carried her bowl to the sink, though it was still half full. Behind her, Lorna said, there's something else. There's always something else when people wait years to talk. The gray-blue strip beside Ruth's dress. Look at it closely. What is it? I don't know. But it wasn't there the last time I saw the quilt. Nora turned. When was that? 8 months before Evelyn died. She had the corner spread across the dining table. I asked if she wanted help. She told me my stitches had become sentimental. What does that even mean? I didn't ask. It sounded expensive. Lorna came to the sink and placed her bowl beside Nora's. Evelyn was waiting for something. I don't know what. She kept that square open on purpose? At work, the gray-blue fabric followed Nora through piles of white sheets. She had seen it without recognizing it because the strip was narrow and faded along one edge. Its color sat somewhere between steel and slate. The hotel uniforms were darker when new, but repeated washing pulled them toward gray. Nora looked down at her own tunic. A year earlier, she had torn an old uniform on the broken latch of Evelyn's wheelchair ramp. The pocket had ripped halfway off. Nora had tossed it into the sewing room scrap bag and worn a cardigan over her t-shirt for the rest of the day, because Evelyn refused to be late for physical therapy. She remembered Evelyn retrieving the uniform from the trash. Don't be dramatic, she had said, when Nora asked why. It's 6 yards of decent cloth ruined by one cheap zipper. The gray-blue strip in the quilt had a line of tiny holes along one side, pocket holes. Nora put the sheet she was holding into the wrong cart. Tanya moved it back. King fitted. I know. You put it with queens. Maybe it identifies differently. Not at these prices. Nora untied her apron. I need to go to Celia's after work. You need sleep after work. I recognized a fabric. Tanya studied her face. Good recognition or bad? I don't know. Those are usually the expensive kind. Celia placed the color photograph beside Nora's uniform beneath the work light. The match was not perfect. The quilt strip had been washed more times and had faded unevenly, but the weave, thread count, and narrow white line where a pocket seam had protected the cloth were consistent. Celia did not say it was proof. She said, it's likely. Nora found herself grateful for the caution. Certainty would have felt like somebody else claiming the memory. She put my uniform next to my mother's dress. It appears so. I threw that uniform away. Evelyn disagreed. That was one of her hobbies. They examined the unfinished area. Ruth's green fabric formed a shallow curve. Nora's gray-blue strip ran beneath it like a foundation. A piece of Evelyn's brown work apron bordered both. Beyond them remained an empty square where the backing and batting had been prepared, but no final block attached. Celia measured it. 10 3/4 inches, she said. Is that a normal size? It was normal to Evelyn. Nora traced the shape without touching. Lorna said she was waiting for something. Possibly. You know, normal people say, That sounds meaningful. Normal people damage textiles. Celia turned off the work light and let the softer room light settle over the quilt. I finished the condition assessment, she said. Nora's stomach tightened. How much do I owe? 450, minus the balance of your studio hours. You've worked 9, which leaves 270. I can finish the other 3 Friday. That brings it to 2. 10. I'll pay the rest in 2 parts. Fine. Celia handed her the report. It contained 12 pages, a diagram of every block, photographs of worn areas, notes on stains and seam failures, and a treatment recommendation limited to stabilization and dry surface cleaning. No bleaching, no wet washing, no attempt to square the irregular sides. On the appraisal page, Celia had attributed the piece to Evelyn Bell, with identified contributions by Mavis Treadwell, Lorna Givens, June Pike, and other regional makers not yet documented. The estimated value was $18,000. Nora sat down. The number felt less thrilling in black ink. It had weight now, and edges. It could be insured, sold, argued over, lost. You put my name here, she said. At the bottom of the object history, the report listed Nora Bell as owner and current custodian. You bought it, Celia said. Custodian sounds like I work nights at a courthouse. It means the person responsible for its care. That part sounds worse. You can request different wording. Nora turned back to the treatment page. What happens if I add a block to the corner? The appraisal changes. How? The object becomes a continued work rather than a completed historic work by Evelyn's hand. It isn't completed. No. That is why this is unusual. Would it be worth less? Nora looked at the empty square. So, I'm responsible for what she didn't do, only if you accept that responsibility. Her phone vibrated on the table. A message from Patrice contained a photograph. Evelyn, Ruth, Patrice, and Dale stood beneath the supper club's striped awning. Ruth wore the green dress. Patrice's hand rested on her sister's arm. Dale looked impatient. Evelyn faced the camera without smiling. Nora enlarged the image. The dress's covered buttons formed a curved line along the bodice. In the quilt, those buttons were gone, but faint circular shadows remained in the green cloth. Patrice had written, "Is this the dress?" Nora replied, "Yes." 3 dots appeared, vanished, then returned. Patrice, I thought Mama threw it away. Nora, she used the strongest pieces. Patrice, that sounds like her. Another pause. Patrice, I'm glad she kept some. No mention of the appraisal, no request for money. Nora placed the phone beside Celia's report. Do you have to tell buyers about the unfinished corner? I have to tell anyone relying on my appraisal everything relevant. So they'll know she meant to add something. They'll know the construction suggests it. But not what. No. Nora stared at the 10 3/4-inch square. At the hotel, every damaged sheet had 2 futures, repair or discard. There was no category for waiting. Could Grandma have finished it herself? She asked. Technically, yes. The preparation is complete. She chose not to. Nora looked at the joining line between Ruth's dress, her own uniform, and Evelyn's apron. The empty place no longer looked like failure. It looked reserved. Reserved did not mean promised. Nora understood that every time she opened Celia's report and saw her name at the bottom. She owned the quilt because she had stood in a crowded dining room and refused to stop bidding. Evelyn had not handed it to her. Evelyn had not written her name on it. Evelyn had died with the last corner open and the quilt shoved onto a shelf. Possibility could comfort a person almost as effectively as certainty, provided she never leaned too hard. Nora did not sell. She did not finish the corner either. She kept working. Mrs. Delgado's curtains led to a set of linen napkins with burned edges. Tanya's coat led to a bellman's torn suit lining, though Nora refused to repair it until he admitted the tear had not appeared spontaneously while the jacket hung in his locker. Mavis sent 2 more women, one with a table runner and another with an old quilt that had developed a split across 3 blocks. Nora looked at the quilt, felt how brittle the brown fabric had become, and told the woman she could not safely repair it at the laundromat. You fixed Mavis's apron, the woman said. An apron tie isn't this. You don't want the job? I don't want to make your quilt worse. The woman looked disappointed, then suspicious, then faintly impressed. Nora referred her to Celia. Celia examined the quilt and later found Nora entering condition image numbers. You turned down $150, she said. I avoided owing somebody a quilt. That was wise. You sound unhappy about it. I'm considering whether wisdom is contagious. Celia had an unused table in the back workroom, left empty since her assistant reduced her hours for school. She offered Nora Saturdays for 20% of whatever repair fees she earned. 20, Nora said. Light, heat, table, storage, liability, scheduling. I do my own scheduling. That explains why a client called here to ask whether Tuesday meant this. Tuesday. She misunderstood. You said Tuesday without a date. 15%. 18. 16, and you let me use the pressing board. Celia held out her hand. 17. Nora shook it. The arrangement did not make her a conservator. Celia repeated that twice. Nora repaired modern household textiles, clothing linings, bindings, and sturdy pieces that could tolerate ordinary use. Anything fragile, historically important, or outside her experience went to Celia. The first Saturday, Nora earned $90, paid Celia $15.30, and spent $12 on thread. She wrote the remaining amount in a notebook Mrs. Delgado gave her. Business needs records, Mrs. Delgado said. I have records. You have numbers on hotel schedules. They're organized. You wrote rent beside a drawing of a coffin. That was a banquet layout. Mrs. Delgado turned the notebook around and wrote Nora Bell Repairs on the first page. The words looked overly official, but Nora did not cross them out. Patrice called while Nora was replacing the lining in a leather purse. I found the original photograph, she said. The one you texted? That was a picture of a picture. This is the actual one. There are others in the envelope. You can keep them. I want you to see them. Nora worked the needle through the old seam holes. Why? Because Ruth is in them. The use of her mother's name instead of your mother made Nora pause. You could bring them to the studio Saturday. I'd rather you come here. I made dinner. You're inviting me to dinner? I've invited you before. You invited me to carry a card table. It included dinner. It included cold pizza after I carried the card table. Patrice sighed. 6 o'clock. Nora heard another voice in the background, too low to distinguish. Who's there? The television. You answer the television now? 6, Nora. Patrice's house was 20 minutes across town, a beige brick colonial with seasonal wreaths and rooms that always smelled faintly of furniture polish. The blue willow bowl sat in the center of the dining table, holding artificial pears. Nora arrived at 6:10. Dale's truck was parked beside the garage. She remained in her car long enough for the porch light to come on. Mallory opened the front door. I didn't know he was coming. Your family lies with very similar eyebrows. I'm serious. Mom told me dinner. Is there dinner? Yes, that's progress. Patrice waited in the dining room beside a roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and 4 place settings arranged as if careful spacing could prevent trouble. Dale stood at the mantel holding a framed photograph. He smiled when Nora entered. She turned to Patrice. You used Mom's pictures to get me here. I wanted you to have them. And him, he wanted to speak with you. His phone works. Dale set the photograph down. You hung up. It has that feature. Mallory moved toward the table. Can we eat before everybody starts? No, Patrice and Nora said together. Patrice pressed her fingers to her temple. Dale lifted a cream envelope from the sideboard. I talked to someone who collects Kentucky folk textiles. He knows Celia Mercer's work and is willing to make an offer based on her appraisal, pending inspection. You sent him my appraisal? I don't have it. I told him the range. You don't own the quilt. We've covered that, have we? He's willing to offer $21,000. The number entered the room and changed everyone's posture. Mallory leaned against a chair. Patrice looked at the envelope, but not at Nora. Dale watched for the reaction he wanted. Nora imagined her car no longer grinding through left turns. A room with a door that did not open onto Ron's toothpaste suspicions. She imagined paying Celia, buying a proper work table, sleeping through an entire night without waking to calculate deposits. What does he get? She asked. The quilt. What do you get? Dale's expression barely shifted. I found the buyer. So I'm trying to create a fair resolution. You receive $7,000. Patrice and I receive 7 each. Mallory made a sound that was almost a cough. Nora stared at Dale. You want me to sell my quilt and give you $14,000. The quilt came from Mom's estate, which sold it, for $82 because none of us had the facts. You had the exact fact that mattered. Grandma made it. We didn't know that. You didn't ask. Patrice touched the back of a chair. Dale, this isn't what you said. He looked at her. You agreed the value should be shared. Before I saw the photographs. What changed? Patrice glanced at Ruth's green dress in the picture on the mantel. I don't know. Something. That is not a financial principle. No, Patrice said. It's a feeling. Those are allowed in this house. Dale's cheeks darkened. Nora crossed her arms. Does your collector know other women worked on the quilt? He knows enough. Does he know the corner is unfinished? He will inspect it. Does he know people slept under it? What difference does that make? All of it. Dale slapped the envelope against his palm. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You've spent a few weeks talking to an appraiser, and now you think you're the only person qualified to understand Mom. No. I think I'm the only person here who tried. I was her son. You sold her house before the medicine was out of the refrigerator. Because there were bills. You keep saying that like it answers every question. It answers the ones adults have to answer. Mallory stepped away from the chair. Nora is an adult. I know how old she is. That isn't the same thing. Dale ignored her. The estate proceeds were not what Patrice and I expected. My business has been carrying debt for 2 years. I used money to cover Mom's expenses before she died. Nora looked at Patrice. Patrice shook her head slightly. Whether she denied knowing or denied the amount, Nora could not tell. Dale continued, I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking you not to treat a lucky purchase like some moral victory. It isn't a victory. You're certainly enjoying and making us regret it. The sentence found its target. Nora had enjoyed telling Mallory the value. She had imagined Dale's face before it ever appeared. Part of her wanted him to feel what $82 had felt like in her hand. But regret was not why she had called Mavis, or why she learned the names of fabrics, or why she had spent hours holding a needle above a weak edge while Celia told her to breathe. I'm not selling to your buyer. Then what are you doing? I don't know yet. You don't know because there's no sensible reason to keep it. You can't store it. You can barely afford the room you're in. Nora, Patrice murmured. Dale heard himself and kept going. Mom had years to give you that quilt. She had a will. She knew what she was doing. If she wanted you to have something, she would have said so. Nora felt the room narrow around him. He pointed toward the envelope. She left the house to Patrice and me. She left her possessions to the estate. She let you live there while she needed you, and that may be hard to hear, but it's true. She never intended you to have anything. Nobody moved. The roast smelled too sweet. A clock ticked in the front room. On the table, the artificial pear sat in Evelyn's bowl, polished and useless. Patrice said his name. Dale looked at Nora and seemed, for one brief instant, to understand the shape of what he had done. Then he defended it. I'm talking about the will. No, Nora said. You're talking about me. She turned toward the door. Patrice caught up in the hallway with the photograph envelope. Take these. Nora did not reach for it. Please, Patrice said. They're copies. I have others. You knew he was coming. I knew he wanted to make an offer. I didn't know he would say that. You knew enough to call the television. Patrice's face tightened. I'm sorry. Nora took the envelope because Ruth was inside it and left without saying anything else. Back in her room, she placed the photographs on the bed beside Celia's report and the estate sale receipt. The papers told a clear story if Nora arranged them badly enough. Evelyn had made the quilt. Evelyn had owned it. Evelyn had written a will that did not name Nora. Dale and Patrice inherited the estate. The estate sold the quilt. Nora bought it. Nothing in those facts said love. The gray-blue strip and green curve said something softer, but cloth could not speak. Lorna had warned her about people remembering what they wished had happened. Nora might be doing the same thing with stitches. She opened Celia's report to the appraisal page. $18,000. Dale's buyer had offered more. Nora picked up her phone and searched for his last message. She did not call. She stared at the number until a knock sounded at the door. Mallory stood in the hall holding Evelyn's brown sewing basket. The green lining showed where the lid had fallen open. I took it, she said. Nora did not move during the sales setup. I thought it was pretty. Then you asked about it, and I lied because Dale was standing there and because I'd spent 2 days telling people not to pocket things. Mallory's face crumpled around a humorless smile. Apparently, ethics are very tiring. You let me search. I know. You watched me ask Patrice. I know. Do you have any response that isn't I know? Mallory held out the basket. No? Nora took it. The wicker was smooth where Evelyn's hand had lifted it for years. Inside lay wooden spools, paper packets of needles, the cracked silver thimble Nora remembered, and scraps wrapped around cards. Beneath them was a square block folded in tissue. Nora knew it before she opened it. She had sewn it at Evelyn's dining table 6 years earlier, soon after moving into the house. The center was cut from one of Ruth's old blouses. Brown points surrounded it, one noticeably shorter than the others because Nora had measured from the fabric edge instead of the seam allowance. Evelyn had made her unpick the outer seam twice. The finished block measured 10 3/4 inches. Mallory watched Nora hold it. Was it important? Nora could not answer. She carried the block to the bed and placed it over the empty corner in the condition photograph. It fit exactly, not approximately, not with the hopeful adjustment grief could make. Every joining line met a prepared seam. Ruth's green curve led into the center. Nora's gray-blue uniform continued beneath the brown points. Evelyn's apron framed the edge. Mallory came closer. Did Grandma plan that? The block was poorly balanced. The stitches wandered. One corner puckered where 20-year-old Nora had pulled the thread too tight, and Evelyn had refused to fix it for her. Nora remembered complaining that the square was ugly. Evelyn had turned it over in her hands and said, "Ugly can still be useful. Put your name on the back so nobody blames me." There, beneath the folded seam allowance, Nora found her name in faded blue ink. She sat on the bed. Mallory sat beside her without touching the block. After a while, Nora looked at the formal appraisal, the $21,000 offer still waiting in Dale's envelope, and the crooked square Evelyn had kept for 6 years. For the first time, the empty corner was not asking what Evelyn had failed to finish. It was asking whether Nora would. Mallory stayed until the dryers stopped beneath the floor. She did not apologize again. She sat beside Nora on the narrow bed while they emptied the sewing basket one layer at a time. Evelyn had kept 4 kinds of white thread, none white. Needles remained in their paper packets according to purpose, except the size 8 sharps, which she had stuck through a scrap labeled "good for most things." Beneath the practice block lay a wooden seam presser, a beeswax cake, 2 peppermints fused to their wrappers, and a spool of brown thread matching the points around Nora's crooked center. She put everything together, Mallory said. She usually did, except tell people. That too. Mallory picked up 1 peppermint and tried to separate paper from candy. "Don't eat that. I wasn't going to." "You were considering it. I'm having a hard night." Nora took the peppermint from her and dropped it into the trash. Mallory looked at the practice block. "Are you going to sew it on?" "I don't know. If you do, what happens to the value?" "I don't know. You should make Celia say something besides, 'I don't know.' She's very committed to it." Mallory folded the tissue around the block, but left 1 brown point visible. "I really am sorry," she said. "Not only about the basket." Nora stared at Evelyn's name labels on the thread cards. "Why did you tell Patrice? I thought if I told her first, she'd keep Dale from turning it into money." "That worked, I know." Nora looked at her. Mallory pressed her lips together. "Sorry? You think telling the truth is the same thing as controlling what everybody does with it?" Mallory's face sharpened. "You think staying quiet means nobody can blame you." The words landed cleanly. Nora could have sent her away. Instead, she put the thread back into the basket. "Maybe both of us should stop learning from Dale." Mallory nodded. At the door, she hesitated. "He already found a buyer. I met the envelope. Dale wants to bring him to Celia's tomorrow." "No. He said you'd say that." "Good. Saves time. He also said the buyer is leaving for Nashville Monday. 21,000 is real money, Nora." "I know." Mallory pulled her coat closed. "Mom told Dale she doesn't want to share." That surprised Nora enough to make her suspicious. What does she want? To stop feeling like Ruth is disappearing every time somebody empties a house. Nora looked toward the envelope of photographs on the bed. Mallory opened the door. "She said that after you left." "Why didn't she say it to me?" Mallory gave a tired smile. Family tradition. Celia did not touch the practice block for several minutes. She placed it beside the empty corner, aligned the seams, turned it over, and examined Nora's name in faded ink. Then she measured all 4 sides twice. "This is strong evidence of intention," she said. "You mean Grandma wanted it there?" I mean, she prepared an opening that matches a block she kept with the materials used around that opening. The arrangement connects fabric from Ruth, Evelyn, and you. Intention is a reasonable interpretation. You've been spending too much time with lawyers. I appraise objects people argue about. Similar effect. Nora ran her finger along the tissue beside the block. Dale's buyer wants to inspect the quilt. Celia removed her glasses. Do you want him to? No, that was efficient. I also want $21,000. That complicates it. Nora walked to the back workroom and returned with the condition report. If I attach this, what do you write? I amend the object description. I document the practice block before attachment, record its maker and known history, and state that the quilt was continued after Evelyn's death, according to evidence found in her sewing basket. And the value? I withdraw the current number until I can assess the completed object. Would his offer disappear? Probably. Nora closed the report. Dale had used her need as proof she should sell. The ugliest part was that he was not wrong about the need. Her car still ground on left turns. The room still belonged to Mrs. Delgado. One missed week of work could undo the thin order Nora had built. Celia waited without improving the silence. If I let him inspect it, Nora said, can it happen here? Yes. Can Dale stop calling it an estate asset in front of him? No. Worth asking. The buyer arrived in a navy coat and apologized for being 7 minutes early. His name was Graham Avery. He was in his 60s, with a careful beard and soft leather gloves he removed before entering the workroom. He had driven from Nashville after a dealer acquaintance told him about a newly identified Evelyn Bell quilt. Dale followed carrying the cream envelope. Patrice came without one. Mallory hovered near the door, as though unsure which side of the room had claimed her. Celia established rules before anyone approached the table. No food, no drinks, clean hands, no lifting without instruction. The owner decides whether the quilt is unfolded. She looked at Nora. Nora opened it. Graham did not praise it immediately. That made Nora trust him more than she wanted to. He examined the front from a distance, then moved closer to study individual blocks. He asked which fabrics had been identified and listened, while Celia described the contributions of Mavis, Lorna, and June. When he saw the swallow stitches beneath the binding, he nodded. I've seen 2 of her repairs, he said. A log cabin quilt in Louisville and the Caldwell coverlet. You knew the stitch? Nora asked. Not by name. Celia's report in Louisville mentioned it. Celia did not look pleased or displeased. She simply turned back the fold. Graham spent nearly 40 minutes with the quilt. Dale checked his watch twice. Patrice stood near Ruth's green fabric, but did not touch it. At last, Graham came to the unfinished corner. The interruption is extraordinary, he said. Nora's shoulders tightened. Interruption? The work stopping where it does. The open batting beside 3 generations of cloth. It's rare to see process preserved this honestly. The practice block remained on a separate padded board behind Nora. What if that space wasn't supposed to stay open? She asked. Graham looked at her. Do you know what she intended? Nora showed him the block. He examined it with the same respectful attention. He read Nora's name on the back and asked when she made it. 6 years ago. And Evelyn kept it with her sewing materials? Yes. He glanced from the block to the opening. It fits. Exactly. That is compelling. Dale stepped closer. Does it affect your offer? Graham ignored him at first. If the block is attached now, he told Nora, the quilt becomes a collaborative work completed after Evelyn's death. That isn't necessarily lesser. It is different. Would you still buy it? I'm interested in Evelyn's work as she left it. So no, I would want the block documented and kept with the quilt, but separate. Nora imagined the practice square inside an archival box, catalogued as related material. Her crooked stitches preserved because they proved something about Evelyn, but never allowed to become part of the thing Evelyn had made room for. What would you do with the quilt? I rotate pieces from my collection through loans and private exhibitions. This one would require conservation storage most of the year. Given the wear, I wouldn't recommend use. Meaning nobody sleeps under it. No? Touches it? Under controlled conditions. Lorna would throw him out, Nora thought. Graham's answers were reasonable. That made them harder to reject. He was not trying to erase the quilt's life. He was trying to protect it from having more. Dale opened the envelope. The written offer is $21,000, pending verification that there are no ownership disputes. Graham turned. There are ownership disputes? No, Nora said. Dale said, it came through a family estate and was sold to Ms. Bell? Yes, but Graham's attention went to the receipt included in Celia's file. Then my offer is to Ms. Bell. Dale's color rose. We discussed a family arrangement. We discussed a textile. I understood you were facilitating contact with the owner. I am. No, Nora said. You're trying to collect $14,000 for making a phone call. Graham put his gloves on slowly. I prefer not to participate in private disagreements. The offer stands directly to you for 48 hours. No commission, no division required. If you decline, I understand. Dale stared at him. That wasn't our conversation. It is now. Graham thanked Celia, then thanked Nora for allowing him to see the quilt. At the door, he paused beside the practice block. Whatever you decide, he said, document it. After he left, Dale shut the workroom door. You made me look dishonest. Mallory let out a startled laugh. That's what you took from this? Dale turned on her. You created the entire situation by telling Patrice an unconfirmed number. I created it by making a phone call? Interesting. Patrice moved between them. Stop. Dale held up the envelope. $21,000 is leaving this room because everybody needs to prove something. No, Nora said. It's leaving because I said no. He looked at her. You haven't said no. Nora picked up the practice block. I'm saying it now. Patrice exhaled. Dale stared at Nora as if waiting for the performance to end. You would turn down that much money to spite us? I hate that no is this expensive. Then say yes, I can't. Because of a crooked square? Because it's mine. The quilt or the square? Nora looked at the empty corner. Both. Dale crushed the envelope slightly in his hand. Mom would call this foolish. Probably. She valued work. She valued practical decisions. She also kept a bad practice block for 6 years. That doesn't mean she wanted you to throw away $21,000. No. It means she wanted me to decide what came next. Patrice touched Dale's arm. He pulled away. Your debt is not Nora's, she said. His face changed. For a moment, he looked less angry than frightened. Nora saw the man beneath the polished jeans and public manners, a son who had converted his mother's house into numbers because numbers could be moved, divided, and used before grief caught up. Then he looked at the quilt and hardened again. Don't come asking family for help when the car dies. He left with the envelope. Patrice stayed long enough to place Ruth's photograph beside the green fabric. She did not ask to touch either one. I should have let you take it, she said. The photograph? The quilt? You didn't stop him. No. Patrice met Nora's eyes. I'm trying to understand why. When she and Mallory were gone, Celia locked the front door. The quilt remained open beneath the work lights. Nora sat beside it. Tell me I made the right decision, she said. I can't. You really can't say one comforting thing. You made an informed decision. That sounds like something printed before surgery. Celia pulled a chair to the other side of the table. If you attach that block, she said, you should not imitate Evelyn's stitch. I thought that was the point. The swallow stitch belongs to her hand. Your repair should be compatible, visible under examination, and honest about when it was made. So, I'm allowed to be worse. You're required to be yourself. Nora threaded one of Evelyn's needles with new brown cotton. Not thread from the basket. Celia insisted old thread belonged to the record and might not bear strain. They tested 3 shades before choosing one that harmonized without disappearing. Nora positioned the practice block over the opening. The seams met. Her first stitch was too tight. Celia made her remove it. The second was better. Nora worked along the edge, joining the square to Ruth's dress, her hotel uniform, and Evelyn's apron. She did not copy the 3-part swallow. Her stitch angled left, caught a narrow bite of strong cloth, and returned through the fold in a small repeating step. After several inches, Celia turned the corner over. The new line was visible beside Evelyn's old work. Different, but not fighting it. What do you call that? Celia asked. Nora looked at the uneven stitches carrying the corner forward. Not finished, she said. Then she put the needle back through. Celia stopped her at 11:30. Nora had reached the second side of the block. Her stitches had grown shorter as her hand tired, and one leaned so far left it nearly touched the one before it. I can finish, she said. You can continue. That isn't the same thing. I'm not leaving it open. It has waited 6 years. It doesn't have to anymore. Celia held out her hand for the needle. Nora looked at the corner, then surrendered it. Celia parked the needle in a square of felt and covered the quilt with clean cotton. She did not make Nora pack it into the car. Instead, she locked the workroom and handed Nora the only spare key. "I thought you didn't leave textiles here overnight," Nora said. "I leave many textiles here overnight. Mine. You refused the first time. I'd known you 30 minutes. Now you know where I keep the fire extinguisher." Nora curled her hand around the key. "Tomorrow," Celia said, "after sleep." Mavis and Lorna arrived before Nora did. They stood outside the studio, arguing over who had been told 9 o'clock. Mavis carried coffee. Lorna carried biscuits and claimed she would have brought coffee if Mavis understood how appointments worked. "I told them," Celia said when Nora looked at her. "You called witnesses, I called contributors." Patrice came 10 minutes later with Ruth's photograph tucked inside a stiff envelope. She hovered near the doorway until Nora pulled out a chair. Mallory did not attend. She had an open house and sent a message containing 6 exclamation points and instructions to photograph everything. Nora replied that Celia already owned a camera. The quilt was uncovered. Mavis found the new corner first. "Your points are uneven. I made that block 6 years ago." "They were uneven then too." Lorna elbowed her aside. "It fits." "That wasn't my comment. It was the useful comment." Patrice approached the table. The pale green dress curved into the center of Nora's practice block. Beside it, the gray-blue uniform and Evelyn's brown apron formed 3 edges of the same square. Patrice placed Ruth's photograph near the green fabric. "She wore that dress twice," she said. "She hated the buttons." "Why?" Nora asked. "They caught on everything." She said covered buttons were invented by people with maids. Nora had never heard Ruth say it, but she heard her mother anyway. Patrice reached toward the cloth, then stopped. "May I?" Nora nodded. Patrice touched the green curve with 2 fingers. Her face did not change dramatically. She did not cry. She simply left her hand there until Mavis opened the biscuit bag and complained that grief should not be conducted on an empty stomach. Nora resumed sewing. Celia photographed the needle position before and after each side. Mavis objected to the delay. Lorna told her history had already suffered enough from Mavis's impatience. The final side joined Nora's block to Evelyn's apron. Halfway across, Nora found one of the old swallow stitches beneath the fold. Her needle touched it and stopped. She could go through the loop. It would make the connection stronger and nearly invisible. Instead, she placed her stitch beside Evelyn's. The 2 lines traveled together for less than an inch before Nora's angled away. When the final knot was secure, Celia turned back the corner and examined the join. Mavis put on her reading glasses. "It's not her stitch." "No," Nora said. "It's good." From Mavis, the word felt almost ceremonial. Lorna looked at the completed corner. "Now it is." "Finished?" Patrice asked. Lorna considered the rest of the quilt. The worn blocks and old repairs, the places where multiple hands had crossed. "No," she said. "It's ready." Graham Avery's offer expired at noon the next day. Nora watched the time pass on her phone while replacing a zipper in Mrs. Delgado's favorite winter coat. At 12:01, no alarm sounded. The quilt did not become worthless. Her bank account did not become fuller. She felt relieved and sick. Celia amended the appraisal. The new report described the practice block, Evelyn's prepared opening, and Nora's decision to continue the work. Celia removed the $18,000 figure and wrote a new range several thousand lower, with an explanation that the market for a continued community textile could not be predicted from sales of single-maker historic quilts. Nora read every word. "You don't have to look pleased," Celia said. "I don't. You look furious. I'm trying to decide whether honesty always costs this much. Dishonesty sends a later invoice." That sounds like Evelyn. "I'm sorry. No, you aren't. No." Nora paid the remaining assessment balance in 2 installments. She did not ask Celia to forgive $1 of it. Her car's transmission failed on a Tuesday, halfway through a left turn into the hotel parking lot. Dale's warning came back so clearly that Nora nearly laughed while traffic backed up behind her. Tanya helped push the car into a space. Mrs. Delgado knew a mechanic who allowed Nora to pay half when the work was done and half over the following month. Nora used repair money for the first payment and picked up 2 extra hotel shifts for the second. $21,000 would have made the problem easier. That remained true. Nora refused to improve the story by pretending otherwise. The repair work kept arriving. One dining chair job became 6 after the owner liked the first cushion. Lorna sent the repaired gold wedding quilt for reinforcement along one edge and paid Nora's full estimate without bargaining. Mavis brought a canvas work apron and tried to bargain enough for both of them. Celia sent Nora every sturdy household piece that did not require conservation treatment. Nora sent fragile work back. They argued over 3 cases and agreed on one. When Mrs. Delgado's 1-month deadline for the quilt frame expired, Nora went downstairs expecting to negotiate another week. Instead, Mrs. Delgado unlocked the vacant room beside the wash and fold. It had once been a shoe repair shop. The front window was painted halfway up. The sink dripped, and a dark rectangle on the wall showed where a machine had stood for so long that the paint around it had faded. $400 a month, Mrs. Delgado said. Electric separate. I can pay $350. You pay $550 upstairs. For a room with a bathroom, I share with a man who labels his toothpaste. The shop has no shower. I don't plan to live here. Then you understand value. They settled at $375 for the first 6 months, rising to $400 if Nora stayed. Mrs. Delgado wrote every term into a lease and made Nora initial the section about pins. The quilt frame fit against the longest wall. Nora moved the folding table down from her room, bought a used work table from Celia's former assistant, and put Nora Bell Repairs on the front window in plain white letters. Mallory designed a logo with a needle, 3 looping swallows, and 4 colors. Nora rejected it. Why did you ask me to design one? Mallory demanded. I asked you to put the name on an invoice. The name needed identity. It has my identity. It's my name. Mallory replaced the swallows with one simple line of angled stitches. Nora approved it, then paid her for 2 hours of design work. Mallory began helping on Thursday evenings. She photographed completed repairs, labeled fabric samples, and built an intake form that asked customers what they wanted an object to keep doing. She also answered every phone call as if the shop employed a staff of 40. Bell Repairs, this is Mallory. How can we help you? Nora looked over from the pressing board. There are 2 of us. Mallory covered the phone. We is still accurate. Their truce did not erase the basket or the group chat pictures. Mallory could not apologize backward. She could only arrive, do the work, and tell the truth before it became useful. Patrice came most Thursdays. At first, she sat near the window with coffee and corrected Mallory's paperwork. Eventually, Nora gave her a box of loose hems and showed her how to secure them. Patrice's stitches were tense and small. You pull too hard, Nora told her. I'm holding it together. You're making the fabric pucker. Patrice looked at the cloth between her fingers. That seems familiar. Dale stayed away. Patrice said his business was still struggling. Mallory said he blamed the house inspection, the economy, his former partner, and one unusually rainy month. Nora did not ask for details. Then he called shortly before Evelyn's birthday. His voice had lost the careful gentleness. He sounded tired. We're having dinner at Patrice's Sunday, he said. She thought we could put Mom's quilt over the sofa. Just for the evening. Did she? A pause. No. I did. Why? Because it's family history. Nora looked across the shop. The quilt rested on a padded bench beneath the window. The finished corner faced outward. Ruth's green dress, Nora's hotel uniform, and Evelyn's apron met around the crooked practice block. Your buyer didn't want family history, she said. He wanted Evelyn's unfinished work. I'm not the buyer. No, I was wrong about how I handled it. It was not an apology, but it stood closer than Dale had before. Nora waited. He continued. I shouldn't have said Mom left you nothing. No, she depended on you more than anybody. That isn't the same as loving me. I know. The answer surprised her. Dale cleared his throat. Can we borrow it? No. His breath came through the phone, but he did not argue immediately. Why not? Because you don't get to display what you sold and call it what Grandma left you. That's harsh. She left you a house full of chances to know her. You sold them, and you bought one, so you get all of her? No. Nora looked at Mavis's blue plant coat, Lorna's flowered uniform, June's wandering stitches. That's not how this quilt works. She invited Dale to Thursday repair night. He did not answer. He can come without borrowing anything, Nora said. I'll think about it. Do that. Nora ended the call. That Thursday, Mavis arrived with peach pie. Lorna brought coffee cake and complained that pie was not supper. Patrice worked on a hem. Mallory photographed an old linen cloth before Nora began its repair. Dale did not come. No one said his name. When the work table grew crowded, Nora unfolded Evelyn's quilt across the padded bench. People touched it after washing their hands. Lorna found her gold satin. Mavis complained again about Nora's uneven points. Mrs. Delgado came in from the laundromat and sat close enough to feel the fabric's weight over her knees. The dryer stopped beneath the floor at 11. The room became quiet. Nora folded the quilt when everyone left and carried it upstairs. She laid it over the narrow bed, climbed beneath it, and switched off the lamp. The finished corner rested against her hand. Her stitches were not hidden. They had already loosened slightly where the old cloth shifted against the new, exactly as Celia said they would. The quilt would need watching. It would need work again. Nora pulled it higher over her shoulder. The corner held.